Hello everyone, and welcome to the DXD Tales. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Issei was a Jedi Knight and fall in love with the angel Irina Shidou. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Force Awakened. Dawn broke over Kuo town, bathing the sleepy streets in golden light. Issei Hyodo stood motionless atop the clock tower, his dark robes billowing slightly in the morning breeze. The stone beneath his boots was cool, rough-hewn, ancient, much like the order he served. With eyes closed, he stretched out with his senses, feeling the ebb and flow of energies that ordinary humans could never perceive. Force flowed through everything. The trees swaying in the distance, the birds circling overhead, the students beginning to trickle toward the academy below. But here, unlike other worlds he'd visited during his training, the Force intertwined with something else, supernatural energies that pulsed and swirled in patterns both familiar and alien. Another convergence point activated last night, he murmured to himself, opening amber eyes that reflected the sunrise. Third one this month. He pulled a small holocommunicator from within his robes and activated it. A miniature blue figure flicked red to life in his palm, an older man with a neatly trimmed beard and serene expression. Master Qatar, Issei bowed his head slightly. Padawan Hyodo, the figure replied, though they both knew the title was merely formality now. Your report is timely. The council has sensed the disturbances as well. The pattern is accelerating. Whatever's happening with the supernatural factions here, it's affecting Force nexus points throughout the region. The holographic master stroked his beard thoughtfully. Your position remains vital, then. Continue your surveillance, but remember, direct intervention only when necessary. Maintain my cover. I understand, Master. Issei completed the familiar warning. May the Force be with you, Knight Hyodo. And with you, Master. The communication ended, leaving Issei alone with the rising sun. With practiced efficiency, he secured the communicator, then reached behind his back to ensure his lightsaber remained hidden beneath the modified school uniform he wore. The weapon was his life, crafted during 3 painstaking weeks of meditation in a cave beneath Mount Fuji. Its crystal, rare and azure, had called to him through the Force, singing a song only he could hear. A bell tolled below, signaling 30 minutes until classes began. Issei took a deep breath, centering himself in the Force before making a controlled leap from the tower to a nearby tree. Then to the ground, movements too quick and graceful for ordinary humans to track. By the time he walked through the academy gates, he had transformed his bearing completely, shoulders slightly slouched, gait casual. Face arranged in the mild expression of an ordinary high school student. This was Issei Hyodo, 3rd year at Kuo Academy. Not Issei Hyodo, Jedi Knight and Guardian of Sector 3742. Yo, Issei. He turned to see Matsuda and Motohama approaching, their Force signatures practically vibrating with their usual mixture of hormonal energy and mischievous intent. His 2 friends, part of his carefully constructed cover identity. Morning, he greeted with a practiced smile. Dude, did you hear? We're getting transfer students today, Matsuda said, Kushi. Ing his glasses up with undisguised excitement. Motohama nodded vigorously. 2 of them. Both girls. As that's so, Issei responded, feigning interest while his mind catalogued more important matters. The energy fluctuation he'd sensed had originated near the old church, abandoned since the devil factions had claimed this territory. He needed to investigate after school. Hello, Earth to Issei. Matsuda waved a hand before his face. Man, you've been spacing out a lot lately. What's with you? Issei blinked, inwardly chastising himself for the lapse in attention. Sorry, just tired. Was up late studying. Both boys stared at him blankly before erupting into laughter. You, studying. Motohama slapped him on the back. That's a good one. Issei forced a chuckle, his constructed identity. Why is an academically unmotivated student sometimes work too well? In reality, he spoke 7 languages fluently and had mastered advanced physics during his Jedi training, skills necessary for a NIG. Who might be deployed anywhere in the galaxy at a moment's notice. The 3 walked toward the main building together, his companions chattering about the prospective measurements of the new transfer students. Issei nodded at appropriate intervals while surreptitiously scanning the school grounds. His senses detected the usual signatures, the concentrated demonic energy from the occult research. Club building where the Grimoire heiress and her peerage spent their time, the more reserved but equally powerful presence of the student council members under Sona Citre's leadership, and the mostly oblivious human students wandering between. But today, something was different. A new energy signature flickered at the edge of his awareness, familiar somehow, yet changed. Not demonic, not quite human, but, "Good morning, class." Their homeroom teacher's voice interrupted his contemplation as they took their seats. "Today I'd like to introduce 2 transfer students who will be joining us." The classroom door slid open, and Issei's carefully maintained composure nearly cracked. The force itself seemed to surge around him in response to his shock. 2 young women entered. The first had blue hair with a green fringe and a stoic expression that didn't quite hide her wariness. But it was the second that caused Issei's heart to stutter in his chest. Chestnut hair tied in twintails. Violet eyes that somehow maintained the same innocence he remembered from childhood. A face that had matured but remained unmistakable. "I'm Zenobia Quarta," the blue-haired girl introduced herself with a slight bow. "And I'm Irina Shidou," the second girl announced with a bright smile that illuminated the room. "I'm so happy to be here. Actually, I used to live in this town when I was little." Her gaze swept the classroom and locked with Issei's. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Recognition flashed in her eyes, followed by genuine delight and something else, something guarded. "Issei-kun," she exclaimed, "is that you?" Every head in the classroom swiveled toward him. Issei straightened slightly, his mind racing through potential responses. His cover identity was supposed to have grown U.P. locally. This coincidence was both convenient and dangerously complicating. "Irina," he acknowledged with a small smile. "It's been a long time." The teacher looked between them. "You 2 know each other." "We were childhood friends," Irina explained enthusiastically. "We used to play together all the time before I moved to England." Murmurs spread through the classroom. Issei could feel Matt's, Uda and Motohama's jealous glares boring into him. "Well, isn't that a lovely coincidence?" the teacher said. "Ms. Shidou, you can take the empty seat beside Mr. Hyodo. Ms. Quarta, please take the seat by the window." As Irina made her way toward him, Issei stretched out through the force, examining her energy signature more carefully. What he found nearly made him gasp aloud. The girl he'd known, the entirely human girl he'd protected during a childhood incident that had first revealed his force sensitivity, now radiated with holy energy. Irina Shidou had become an angel. "It's so wonderful to see you again," she whispered as she took her seat, her smile warm and genuine. "We have so much to catch up on." "We certainly do," he replied carefully, noting how Zenobia watched their interaction with sharp, assessing eyes. The force whispered warnings. These were no ordinary transfer students. Angels didn't enroll in devil-controlled territory without purpose, likely a mission of significant importance. And based on the concealed shape he sensed beneath Zenovia's uniform, they'd come armed. As the teacher began the day's lesson, Issei divided his attention between maintaining his cover and analyzing this new development. His mission parameters had just become significantly more complex. During lunch break, Issei found himself sitting beneath a large oak tree in the courtyard. Irina beside him bubbling with enthusiasm while Zenobia stood stoically nearby, arms crossed. He had carefully maneuvered them away from the main building, establishing a perimeter through the F-Ors to ensure their conversation remained private. "England was wonderful. The church there has the most beautiful stained glass you've ever seen," Irina was saying, maintaining their cover story with impressive skill. Yet beneath her cheerful exterior, Issei sensed calculation and purpose. "Father's work kept us moving around Europe, but I never forgot Kuo. Are you, Issei-kun?" "I'm surprised you recognized me," he replied, projecting casual friendliness while studying her closely. "It's been, 10 years? You haven't changed that much." "Well, you've gotten taller, of course, and more," she paused. A faint blush coloring her cheeks, more grown-up looking. "But you still have the same eyes." Zenobia made a small noise that might have been impatience. Irina shot her a quick glance before turning back to Issei. "So, Have you been in Kuo this whole time? What have you been up to? Are your parents well? The rapid-fire questions were natural for a reunion, but Issei detected the subtle information gathering beneath. Two could play that game. My parents moved to Tokyo for work 3 years ago, he answered, crafting truth and fiction seamlessly. I stayed to finish school here. Nothing too exciting. Just normal student life. He smiled, then added, what brings you back to Kuo after all this time? Especially mid-semester. A flicker of tension passed between the two transfers before Irina answered. Father's work again. He's doing research on local religious history. We'll only be here for a short while, actually. Her fingers unconsciously touched a cord around her neck. Something concealed beneath her uniform. Issei sensed the object through the force, a cross, but imbued with holy power. A focal point for angelic abilities, perhaps. That's too bad, he said. I was hoping we'd have more time to catch up. Oh, we will, Irina insisted, leaning slightly closer. Actually, I was wondering if you could show us around town this afternoon. So much has changed, and Zenovia's never been here before. A perfect opportunity to learn their true purpose. Yet also potentially dangerous if they suspected his nature. I'd be happy to, he agreed. There's a new shopping district that's worth seeing, and the park's been completely renovated. Perfect. Irina clapped her hands together. Zenovia finally spoke, her voice measured and direct. Does the old church on the hill still stand? The question confirmed Issei's suspicions. The abandoned church had been the site of a conflict between fallen angels and devils months ago, and was near the energy fluctuation he'd detected that morning. It does, though it's been abandoned for years, he answered carefully. Not much to see there. We'd like to see it anyway, Zenovia stated flatly. For historical interest. Our fathers were both very religious, Irina added quickly. It's a family connection. Issei nodded, maintaining his casual demeanor while his mind raced through possibilities. We can certainly walk by it, though I don't think it's open to visitors. The bell signaling the end of lunch period saved him from further questioning. As they walked back to class, Issei felt a disturbance in the force, subtle but distinct. Someone was watching them. He cast his senses wider, identifying the observer almost immediately. Tsubaki Shinra, vice president of the student council, was observing from a second-floor window. Her demonic energy carefully controlled but detectable to his trained senses. The devils were monitoring the angels. And now, with his apparent connection to Irina, they would be monitoring him as well. Complications upon complications. After classes ended, Issei sent a brief encoded message to Master Qatar through his secure communicator. Angelic operatives identified at Kuo Academy. Purpose unknown. Investigating. He met the two transfers at the school gate, having changed from his uniform into casual clothes, dark jeans and a deep red shirt beneath a black jacket. The outfit allowed greater freedom of movement and concealed his lightsaber more effectively than the school blazer. Ready for the grand tour? He asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Irina and Zenovia had also changed. Irina wore a simple white blouse and purple skirt that enhanced her innocent appearance, while Zenovia had opted for practical pants and a fit-ed jacket that Issei suspected concealed more than one weapon. Lead the way. Irina linked her arm through his with easy familiarity, sending an unexpected warmth through him. Their tour began innocuously enough. Issei showed them the renovated downtown area, pointing out new shops and restaurants while carefully directing the conversation toward harmless topics. Throughout, he maintained a portion of his awareness in the force, monitoring both his companions and their surroundings. You seem to know everyone, Zenovia observed after Issei exchanged greetings with the third shopkeeper. He shrugged. Small town. People notice when you've been around for a while. Issei-kun was always friendly, Irina added, her expression momentarily distant with remembrance. Remember when you helped that lost child find her mother at the summer festival? You were always doing things like that. The memory caught him off guard, a genuine moment from before his Jedi training had begun. I'm surprised you remember that. I remember everything about those days, she said softly, then brightened artificially. Oh look, crepes. Do they still make the strawberry ones you liked? As they approached the food stand, Issei felt a disturbance, a malevolent presence approaching rapidly from the east. Simultaneously, he noticed Zenobia and Irina tense slightly, their senses apparently detecting the same threat. Actually, he said smoothly, guiding them away from the crowded street, there's a better place around the corner. More selection. The diversion allowed him to direct them toward Al's populated area while seemingly maintaining their casual outing. Once they'd turned into a quieter street, Irina's demeanor changed subtly. Issei-kun, she said, her voice lower, did you ever visit the old church after I left? Once or twice, he answered truthfully. Why do you ask? Just curious if you maintained any interest in. A thunderous crash interrupted her, followed by screams from the main street they'd just left. Issei's senses flared in warning just as a massive form smashed through the wall of a building 30 meters ahead of them, sending debris scattering across the pavement. Standing amid the dust and rubble was a creature that no ordinary human would recognize, a stray devil that had devolved into a monstrous form. Its body was vaguely humanoid but twisted, with elongated limbs ending in curved talons and a face split by a mouth filled with needle-like teeth. Corrupt energy rolled off it in waves that made the air itself seem to warp. Civilians ran screaming in the opposite direction. In seconds, the street had cleared except for Issei, Irina, Zenobia, and the abomination before them. Run, Issei, Irina shouted, her hand moving to her neck where the concealed cross hung. Instead, Issei assessed the situation with calm precision. This creature was dangerous but relatively weak compared to others he'd encountered. However, its appearance was true. Stray devils rarely ventured into populated areas during daylight hours. Both of you get back, he said, his voice dropping an octave as he shed the persona of ordinary student. What? Irina looked at him in confusion. No, you don't understand. But Issei was already moving. Not with the supernatural speed of devils or angels, but with the fluid grace of a Jedi Knight. He closed distance to the creature in an instant, drawing the devil's attention away from the civilians still fleeing in the distance. The stray devil howled, a sound like metal grinding against stone, and lunged toward him, talons extended. Issei waited until the last possible moment before sidestepping with precision, using the force to propel himself into a backflip that carried him over the creature's reaching claws. Landing lightly behind the monster, he delivered a force-enhanced kick to the back of its knee, causing it to stagger. The devil roared in rage, spinning with unexpected speed and unleashing a blast of corrupt energy from its mouth. Issei raised his hand, channeling the force to create a barrier that dispersed the energy attack. The effort required concentration. Devil energy interacted strangely with the force, but he maintained his focus, deflecting the worst of the blast while allowing some to dissipate harmlessly around him. Impossible, he heard Zenobia mutter from behind him. The devil charged again, forcing Issei to make a decision. Maintaining his cover identity was important, but civilian lives took precedence. With a fluid motion, he reached beneath his jacket and withdrew his lightsaber. The azure blade ignited with a distinctive snap hiss, bathing the street in blue light. The stray devil halted momentarily, its malformed face registering something akin to confusion at the unfamiliar weapon. Issei shifted into the opening stance of Form V, Gem So, his preferred lightsaber combat style that balanced defense and aggressive counterattacks. The force flowed through him, guiding his movements with precision beyond human reflexes. When the devil attacked again, Issei was ready. He parried a swipe of its talons with his lightsaber, the energy blade, searing through the creature's flesh and causing it to shriek in pain. Using the momentum of his parry, he spun into a powerful strike that severed the devil's arm at the elbow. The creature staggered back, black ichor spilling from its wound. Enraged beyond reason, it gathered corrupt energy for another blast, larger than before, fueled by pain and fury. Issei centered himself in the force, then thrust his free hand forward. The telekinetic push slammed into the devil with the force of a speeding truck, disrupting its attack and sending it crashing into a concrete wall 20 meters away. Before it could recover, Issei closed the distance in 2 force-enhanced bounds. The lightsaber flashed once, twice, precise, economical movements. The stray devil's head and remaining arm fell to the ground as its body collapsed. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. Issei stood motionless for a moment, reaching out with his senses to ensure no other threats lurked nearby. Finding none, He deactivated his lightsaber and turned to face Irina and Zenobia. Both women stood transfixed, their own weapons now revealed, Zenobia holding an enormous wrapped sword and Irina wielding what appeared to be a transformed holy cross, now a glowing ribbon of light. Their expressions displayed identical shock. "I believe," Issei said calmly, "we have much to discuss." They relocated to a secluded clearing in the park, well away from curious eyes and potential eavesdroppers. Issei established a perimeter through the force, creating a subtle suggestion that would direct any wanderers away from their location. Only then did he face the two angels, who had maintained stunned silence during their retreat. "You're not human," Zenobia stated flatly, her massive sword, Excalibur destruction. Issei now recognized from Jedi records, resting across her knees as she sat on a stone bench. "Neither are you," he countered, remaining standing. Irina stepped forward, her expression a complex mixture of confusion, hurt, and wonder. "What are you, Issei? That weapon, those abilities, they're not sacred gear or magic I recognize." Issei weighed his options carefully. His ion parameters allowed limited disclosure when necessary, particularly to non-hostile supernatural entities. Angels generally maintained neutrality in regional conflicts, focusing on heaven's interests rather than territorial disputes. "I am a Jedi Knight," he said finally, deciding that partial truth would serve better than evasion. "We are peacekeepers, guardians of balance. I've never heard of Jedi in any scriptural texts," Zenobia said suspiciously. "You wouldn't have. We operate beyond typical supernatural awareness." Irina's eyes widened. "Beyond? You mean?" "I mean that there are forces in this universe that even heaven and hell have little knowledge of," Issei said carefully. "The Jedi Order has existed for thousands of years, monitoring and maintaining balance where necessary." He unclipped his lightsaber from his belt and held it horizontally across his palms, allowing them to examine it without relinquishing his grip. "This is a lightsaber, the weapon of a Jedi. The blade is pure energy, capable of cutting through almost any material. And those movements, that invisible force you used against the stray devil?" Irina asked, stepping closer to examine the weapon. "We call it simply, the Force. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. Those sensitive to it, like myself, can learn to feel and manipulate it." Zenovia's eyes narrowed. "Convenient that you never mentioned these abilities when you were children." "I hadn't begun my training then," Issei replied truthfully. "I was identified as Force-sensitive shortly after Irina left Japan. I've spent most of the intervening years training off-world." "Off-world?" Irina gasped. "You mean?" "Yes." The implications hung in the air between them. Irina sat down heavily on the bench beside Zenobia, her light weapon transforming back into a cross that she clutched tightly. "All this time," she murmured, "while I was training to serve heaven, you were serving the Force," he completed. "Different paths, but perhaps not so dissimilar in purpose." Zenobia clearly remained skeptical. "Why reveal yourself now? And why are you in Kuo at all?" A fair question that deserved a measured response. "I'm here because unusual energy convergences have been detected in this region, interactions between the Force and supernatural energies that could have significant consequences if left unmonitored." He clipped his lightsaber back to his belt. "As for why I revealed myself to you, you are clearly on a mission of importance, that brought two angels into devil territory. That suggests a threat that transcends the usual factional boundaries." Irina and Zenobia exchanged glances, communicating silently. "We cannot share the details of our mission," Zenobia said firmly. "I'm not asking you to," Issei assured them. "But if our purposes align, protecting innocent lives and maintaining balance, perhaps we can assist each other." Irina stood suddenly, moving to stand directly before him. Her violet eyes searched his face with an intensity that momentarily disrupted his Jedi composure. "You're really Issei, the same boy who protected me from those bullies? Who climbed that ridiculously tall tree to rescue a kitten? Who promised we'd always be friends?" Something in her voice, a vulnerability beneath the angelic power, resonated with a memory long suppressed during his Jedi training. A warm summer day, two children sitting beneath a blooming cherry tree, making promises neither fully understood. "I am," he admitted softly. Though I've walked a different path than either of us expected. She studied him for a moment longer, then nodded decisively. I believe you, Irina, Zenobia warned. Our mission doesn't prohibit accepting help, Irina countered, especially from. She hesitated, then continued with determination, from an old friend with unique abilities that could prove valuable. Issei sensed the conflict within Zenobia, duty warring with practicality. Finally, she sighed. Very well, limited cooperation may be acceptable. She fixed Issei with a stern gaze. But we share only what is necessary. And at the first sign of interference with our primary objective, we part ways. Agreed, Issei confirmed. Now, perhaps you can tell me why 2 exorcists from the church are interested in an abandoned building in Devil territory. As twilight descended over Kuo, 3 figures approached the dilapidated church on the outskirts of town. The building stood on a hill overlooking the city. Its once grand architecture now marred by neglect. Broken windows gaped like empty eye sockets, and vines crawled up crumbling stone walls. The church deployed us to recover stolen Excalibur fragments, Zenobia explained as they surveyed the building from the cover of nearby trees. 3 fragments were taken by fallen angels, reportedly led by Kokobile. A cadre, Issei noted, recalling his briefings on supernatural hierarchy. That's concerning. More than concerning, Irina added grimly. If he manages to reforge Excalibur, even partially, the power could upset the balance between factions. Some believe he intends to restart the Great War. Issei stretched out with his senses, probing the church and its surroundings. There are wards in place, recently reinforced, and several presences inside, not fallen angels, but something else. Corrupted human energy signatures, stray exorcists, Zenobia confirmed. Humans who turned against the church, often allying with fallen angels or devils. Dangerous and unpredictable. How do you want to approach this? Issei asked, noting how naturally they'd fallen into strategic planning together. Zenobia indicated the rear of the church. There's a secondary entrance through the old rectory. Less likely to be heavily guarded. I'll take point, Irina offered. My Excalibur mimic can adapt to different combat situations. Issei nodded, impressed by their tactical thinking. I can sense 4 individuals inside, all on the main floor. Likely a patrol or guard detail rather than the main force. Then we secure the church, gather intelligence, and determine our next move, Zenobia decided. They moved silently through the gathering darkness, Issei using the force to mask their approach from potential sentries. The rectory door was locked but yielded easily to Issei's telekinetic manipulation of its internal mechanism. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and decay, and something else. A lingering core, ruption that made the force itself seem to recoil. Issei focused, centering himself and pushing away the discomfort. Something's wrong, he whispered. This place has been tainted beyond normal fallen angel influence. The Excalibur fragments, Irina suggested. Their holy nature being corrupted would create a spiritual dissonance. They navigated through narrow corridors, following Issei's sense toward the presences he'd detected. As they approached the main sanctuary, voices became audible, harsh, mocking laughter and crude jokes. Can't believe we're stuck on guard duty while Freed gets all the fun. One voice complained. Shut up, another responded. After what happened to the last team, I'm happy to be bored. Issei signaled for Irina and Zenobia to wait, then peered carefully around a corner. The sanctuary lay in ruins, pews splintered, altar desecrated, once beautiful stained glass windows shattered. 4 men in modified exorcist garb lounged amid the destruction, weapons close at hand. Their auras pulsed with corrupted light, human, but twisted by exposure to dark energies. He withdrew and reported what he'd seen. Standard patrol configuration. 2 with light swords, 2 with firearms. Relatively relaxed, not expecting trouble. We take them quickly and quietly, Zenobia decided. Subdue rather than eliminate if possible, they may have information. I'll handle the 2 on the left, Issei offered. You take the right. With a plan established, they moved into position. Issei drew upon the force, feeling it flow through him, calming his mind and sharpening his senses. He caught Irina's eye for a moment, saw determination there, but also something else. Trust, perhaps. The connection felt strangely significant. Then there was no more time for reflection. They moved simultaneously, Issei employing force speed to cross the sanctuary in a blur while Zenobia charged forward with Excalibur destruction raised and Irina's weapon transformed into a constricting whip. The stray exorcists reacted with trained reflexes, but too slowly. Issei reached the first man before he could draw his light sword, delivering a precise force-enhanced strike to a nerve cluster that rendered him unconscious instantly. The second managed to raise his gun, but Issei simply extended his hand, using telekinesis to crush the weapon's barrel before it could fire. What the man began. Before Issei's lightsaber, activated momentarily to slice through the exorcist's sleeve and graze his arm, caused him to drop to his knees in shock and pain. Meanwhile, Zenobia had slammed the flat of her massive blade against one opponent's chest, sending him crashing into a wall, while Irina's ribbon-like weapon had ensnared the fourth man, binding his arms to his sides. In less than 10 seconds, the threat had been neutralized. Impressive coordination, Issei noted as he bound the wrists of his subdued opponents with cord from his utility belt. "You're not so bad yourself," Irina replied with a quick smile that reminded him, unexpectedly, of their childhood. "That weapon is remarkable." Zenobia was less interested in compliments. She grabbed the least injured exorcist and hauled him to his feet. "Where are the Excalibur fragments?" she demanded. "Where is Kokobile?" The man laughed, a brittle, unhinged sound. "You're too late, church dogs. The fallen lord has already moved them." "Where?" Zenobia's voice dropped dangerously. "Why would I tell you that? Freed would skin me alive, literally." Issei stepped forward. "You don't need to tell us," he said calmly, waving his hand subtly. "You want to sleep now." The force suggestion took hold immediately. The man's eyes rolled back, and he slumped unconscious in Zenobia's grip. She stared at Issei. "What did you do to him?" "A simple mind technique. He'll be fine." Issei moved to examine the sanctuary more closely. "They've cleared out recently, within the last day. But they left something behind." He approached the desecrated altar, feeling a disturbance in the force centered around it. Brushing aside debris, he revealed a symbol carved into the stone, a complex pattern that seemed to hurt the eyes when viewed directly. "That's not a holy symbol," Irina said, coming to stand beside him. "Nor is it associated with fallen angels." "No," Issei agreed grimly. "It's older, much older." He traced the air above the carving, following its lines without touching it. "This is a convergence marker, a way to identify and manipulate points where different energy systems intersect." "Different energy systems? You mean like your force and our holy power?" Irina asked. "Precisely. Whoever did this understands both supernatural energies and the force, or at least enough about the force to exploit its connection points." Issei frowned. "That knowledge shouldn't exist on Earth. Could another of your Jedi have shared it?" Zenobia asked, her tone making clear her suspicion. "No." His response was immediate and certain. "But there are others who use the Force who are not Jedi. Those who embrace its darker aspects. The Sith," a new voice announced from the shadows behind them. All three spun to face the newcomer. A figure stepped from the darkness, a young woman with long black hair and stern eyes partially concealed behind red-framed glasses. She wore the Kuo Academy uniform with perfect precision. "Tsubaki Shinra," Issei acknowledged, recognizing the student council vice president. "I thought I sensed a familiar presence watching us." "Hyodo," she replied coolly. "Or should I say, Jedi Knight. You've been keeping secrets." Her demonic energy was carefully controlled, powerful but disciplined. Unlike many devils Issei had encountered, she projected calculation rather than aggression. "As have you, Vice President," he countered. "Though I've always known what you are." Tension crackled between them until Irina stepped forward. "Why are you here, devil?" she asked, her cross weapon still ready in her hand. "The same reason you are," Tsubaki answered. "Investigating a threat that concerns all factions." Her gaze shifted to the symbol on the altar. "Though I didn't expect to find that." "You know what it is?" Issei asked, reassessing her. "Not specifically, but similar markings were found at 2 other locations following energy disturbances." She adjusted her glasses precisely. "President Citri sent me to investigate the pattern. The pieces connected in Issei's mind. The convergence points I've been tracking." Tsubaki nodded once. 3 activations in the past month. each stronger than the last, and each corresponding with the theft of an Excalibur fragment, Zenobia added, understanding dawning on her face. Someone is using the fragments to amplify the convergence effect, Issei theorized. But why? That's what we all want to know, Tsubaki said. She studied the three of them critically. It seems we have a mutual interest. Resident Citri would like to speak with you. Zenobia tensed. We don't answer to devils. Nor do I, Issei added calmly. But cooperation may serve all our purposes. The invitation isn't a command, Tsubaki clarified. It's an opportunity to share intelligence about a threat that affects angels, devils, and apparently Jedi. Issei exchanged glances with Irina and Zenobia. The mission had grown more complex, but also potentially more informative. If the Devil faction had data on the convergence points, it could prove valuable. We'll meet with Citri, he decided. Tomorrow. Neutral ground. Tsubaki nodded. The old shrine at the edge of town. Sunset. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Hyodo. Whatever you are, whatever power you wield, it has attracted attention beyond Kuo. Be careful. With that cryptic warning, she vanished into a transportation circle, leaving the three of them alone in the desecrated church. Can we trust her? Zenobia asked immediately. Trust is relative, Issei replied, but the Citri clan is known for intellect and strategic thinking rather than aggression. If they're investigating these convergence points, they've recognized the larger threat. Irina had moved to examine the symbol more closely. What did she mean about the Sith? You mentioned those who use the dark side of your force. Issei joined her at the altar, his expression grave. The Sith are the ancient enemies of the Jedi. They use the Force for power, dominance, and destruction rather than protection and balance. He gestured to the symbol. If ith Lord has come to Earth and is working with fallen angels, the consequences could be catastrophic. The implications hung heavy in the air between them. A cadre of fallen angels with Excalibur fragments was dangerous enough. Adding a dark force user to the equation escalated the threat exponentially. We should report this to our superiors, Zenobia said after a moment. Agreed. Issei withdrew his communicator. I need to inform the Jedi Council as well. As they prepared to leave the church, Irina touched Issei's arm lightly. When we were children, she said quietly, you saved me from danger without even understanding your powers. I never forgot that. Her words stirred something within him, an echo of connection that his Jedi training had taught him to subdue but never quite eliminated. The Force guides us in unexpected ways, he replied, uncertain why her presence affected his usually unshakable composure. She smiled, a genuine expression that seemed to illuminate the darkness around them. Perhaps heaven does too. Later that night, Issei knelt in meditation on the rooftop of his apartment building. Stars glittered overhead, distant suns, some with worlds he had visited during his training. The cool night air carried the sense of the city below, food cooking in late-night establishments, vehicle exhaust, flowering trees in nearby parks. He breathed deeply, seeking the calm center that Jedi training had instilled in him. Today's events had disrupted his carefully maintained balance. Seeing Irina again, not as the human girl he remembered, but as an angel with her own power and purpose, had awakened memories and feelings he'd believed long transcended. There is no emotion, there is peace. The first line of the Jedi Code echoed in his mind. Yet emotion had stirred within him nonetheless. Concern for Irina's safety, anger at the desecration of a sacred place, unease at the prospect of a Sith presence on Earth. Most troubling of all, a sense of connection to Irina that went beyond their shared childhood. Something in the Force itself seemed to resonate when they were together, creating harmonics he couldn't fully interpret. His communicati on with Master Katar had been brief but significant. The Jedi Council was concerned by the possibility of Sith involvement with supernatural factions. His mission parameters had been expanded: identify the Sith if present, determine their objective, and prevent any catastrophic manipulation of convergence points. Be mindful, Knight Hyodo, Master Katar had warned. If a Sith Lord has indeed come to Earth, they will sense your presence as you sense theirs. Your training is complete, but experience is a teacher of its own. Proceed with caution. The warning was well-founded. Issei had encountered Sith only once before. during a training mission that had nearly ended in disaster. Their power in the dark side was formidable, their cunning legendary. He extended his awareness through the Force, searching for disturbances. Kuo was relatively calm tonight. The usual flux of demonic energy from devil territories, the bright points of light that represented angels, the more diffuse C.G. natures of ordinary humans dreaming in their beds. And something else. At the very edge of his perception, a cold presence, watching. Waiting. Issei opened his eyes, scanning the darkness. Nothing visible, yet the sensation persisted. A predatory awareness focused on him briefly before withdrawing beyond his range of detection. He rose fluidly to his feet, lightsaber in hand though not activated. Whoever, or whatever, had observed him was gone for now, but would return. Of that, he was certain. The game had begun. Morning arrived with golden light and cherry blossoms drifting on the breeze. Issei walked to school with heightened awareness, noting how ordinary everything appeared. Students chatting about upcoming exams, teachers greeting each other near the gates, birds singing in trees lining the path. Yet beneath this veneer of normality, currents of power swirled. He sensed Irina and Zenobia approaching before he saw them, their angelic energy distinct among the mundane human auras surrounding them. "Good morning, Issei-kun," Irina called with a cheerfulness that seemed incongruous after last night's discoveries. Yet he understood the necessity of maintaining their cover identities. "Morning," he replied with a casual smile, falling into step beside them. "Sleep well." "Well enough," Zenobia answered curtly. She'd never be mistaken for a typical high school student with her serious demeanor. "We were discussing visiting that shrine after school," Irina said meaningfully. "The one with the historic significance." "Their planned meeting with the Sea-Tree Devil." Issei nodded. "I'd be happy to show you." As they passed through the school gates, a commotion near the main building caught their attention. A crowd had gathered, students whispering excitedly among themselves. "What's happening?" Irina wondered. A passing student overheard. "Haven't you heard? We've got another transfer student. A university professor's assistant or something, super young and supposedly gorgeous." Issei frowned slightly. Another new arrival, immediately following their discovery of the convergence symbol. The timing seemed suspicious. They made their way toward the classroom, but before they could enter, a presence in the Force made Issei freeze mid-step. A cold, familiar energy, the same he'd sensed watching him last night, but stronger now. "Closer, Issei," Irina questioned, noting his sudden tension. He forced himself to relax. "It's nothing. Just remembered something I forgot to do." The lie didn't convince her. He could see that in her eyes, but she didn't press the issue as they entered the classroom and took their seats. Minutes later, their teacher arrived with an announcement. "Class, we have a special guest joining us today. Dr. Malachor will be observing several classes as part of an educational research project. Please make him welcome." The man who entered behind the teacher appeared to be in his late 20s, tall and lean with aristocratic features and eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His black hair was precisely styled, and he wore an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that suggested European craftsmanship. Everything about him projected cultured intelligence and quiet authority. And power. To Issei's Force-sensitive perception, the man radiated dark energy carefully controlled and concealed, like a black hole hidden behind a veil. "Thank you for your welcome, Drive," Malachor said, his voice a pleasant baritone with the faintest accent Issei couldn't immediately place. "I look forward to observing your excellent educational methods." His gaze swept the classroom, lingering for the briefest moment on Issei before moving on to Irina and Zenobia. A slight smile curved his lips, knowing, amused. Issei maintained his casual posture through iron discipline, but inwardly, alarms blared. This was no ordinary academic. This was a Sith Lord who had walked directly into Kuo Academy, establishing a position that gave him access and legitimacy. And he had just made eye contact with Issei, a challenge and acknowledgement wrapped in a seemingly innocent glance. The game hadn't just begun. It had escalated dramatically. As Dr. Malachor took a seat at the back of the classroom to observe, Issei reached out cautiously through the Force, trying to gauge the extent of the Sith's power without revealing his own probing. The answer came immediately, a mental wall so complete and impenetrable it might as well have been solid durasteel. Beside him, Irina shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing something wrong about the newcomer, though likely unable to identify exactly what. Zenobia too had straightened in her seat, hand drifting instinctively toward where her weapon would be if not dimensionally stored. The morning lesson proceeded with excruciating normalcy while Issei's mind raced through possibilities and strategies. One fact was certain: confronting a Sith Lord required preparation and the right circumstances. A classroom full of innocent students was neither. When the lunch bell finally rang, Issei gathered his things with deliberate calm, signaling subtly for Irina and Zenobia to follow his lead. They had almost reached the door when a voice stopped them. "Mr. Hyodo, isn't it, Dr. Malakor's tone was pleasant, conversational. "Might I have a word? Your perspective as a long-time student would be valuable for my research." A dozen responses flashed through Issei's mind: evasions, excuses, deflections. But none would serve his purpose. Better to gauge his opponent directly, in a controlled interaction. "Of course, Drive, Malakor," he replied with a polite smile. "Though I'm not sure how helpful I can be. I'll be the judge of that." The Sith's smile never reached his eyes. "Perhaps your friends would like to join us. The more perspectives, the better." Irina stepped forward. "We'd be happy to help." They followed Drive Malakor to an empty faculty office he'd apparently been assigned. Once inside, he closed the door and gestured to chairs arranged before a desk. "Please, sit." It sounded like a suggestion. It wasn't. Issei remained standing. "I think we can dispense with the pretense, don't you?" Quote. Dr. Malakor's smile widened fractionally. "As you wish, Jedi." He moved to the window, looking out over the school grounds. "I was curious how long you would maintain the charade." "Not long, it seems." "Why are you here?" Issei demanded, hand drifting toward his concealed lightsaber. "For knowledge. For power. For the same reasons Sith have always pursued their goals." He turned back to face them. "The question is, why are you here, young knight? The Jedi Council has historically shown little interest in this primitive world." "Primitive?" Irina bristled. "Earth is under heaven's protection." Dr. Malakor regarded her with something approaching pity. "My dear angel, your heaven is but one-dimensional plane among thousands. Significant to you, certainly, but hardly the universal power you imagine. You're working with Kokabeel," Zenobia stated flatly, "using the Excalibur fragments to manipulate convergence points." "Working with?" "No." The Sith Lord seemed genuinely amused by the suggestion. "Fallen angels, devils, angels, all useful tools, certainly. Resources to be directed toward greater purposes. But equals? Hardly." The casual dismissal of supernatural powers that had shaped Earth's history for millennia revealed the Sith's arrogance, and perhaps his greatest weakness. "What are you planning?" Issei pressed. Dr. Malakor studied him thoughtfully. "You show promise, young Jedi. I sense unusual connections within you, adaptations to this world's unique energies that most Force users would struggle to achieve." He stepped closer. "The Jedi have taught you to suppress your potential, to fear your own power. I could show you otherwise. The classic Sith approach, temptation through promises of knowledge and power." Issei had been warned of such tactics during his training. "I'm not interested in Sith teachings," he replied evenly. "No, not even to protect your friends. Your." Dr. Malakor's gaze shifted to Irina, attachments. Issei felt a flicker of anger rise within him at the implied threat, then released it into the Force, maintaining his center. "Threatening an angel of heaven is unwise," Irina said, her cross weapon appearing in her hand. "Though not yet transformed. No threats, Ms. Shidou. Merely observations." The Sith returned his attention to Issei. "You have a choice to make, young knight. The convergence approaches, a moment when barriers between dimensions thin, when power flows more freely than at any time in millennia. You can stand with the Jedi, clinging to outdated dogma, or embrace a larger understanding of the Force. By helping you harness that power for yourself." Issei challenged. "By recognizing that power itself is neither light nor dark, it simply is. What matters is the will to use it." Dr. Malakor moved toward the door. "Consider carefully. We will speak again." With that, he departed, leaving the three of them alone in the suddenly too quiet office. "He's manipulating the convergence points," Zenobia said immediately. using the Excalibur fragments as catalysts. Yes, Issei agreed, but there's more to it. He spoke of dimensions thinning. That suggests he's attempting to create a gateway of some kind. A gateway to where? Irina asked, her expression troubled. That's what we need to find out. Issei's communicator signaled an incoming message. And quickly. Whatever he's planning is already in motion. The old shrine at the edge of town stood on a forested hill overlooking Kuo, a simple wooden structure that had somehow survived centuries of war, weather, and urban development. Sacred rope marked its boundaries, and stone lanterns lined the path leading to its entrance. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, 3 figures approached from the west while 2 emerged from the trees to the east. Sona Sitri and Tsubaki Shinra waited beside a stone torii gate, their postures formal but not aggressive. As Issei, Irina, and Zenobia drew near, Sona stepped forward. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," she said, her voice precise and measured. "Unusual circumstances call for unusual alliances." Issei inclined his head slightly. "President Sitri, I believe we have matters of mutual concern to discuss." "Indeed." She gestured toward the shrine. "Shall we? I've established privacy wards." Inside, the shrine was simple but well maintained. Polished wooden floors, white paper screens, and a central altar where offerings might be placed. Cushions had been arranged in a circle, suggesting Sona had prepared carefully for this meeting. Once they were seated, the devil heiress wasted no time on pleasantries. 3 convergence points have activated in the past month, she began, removing a map from a folder beside her. Here, and most recently, the old church. The map showed Kuo and surrounding areas, with 3 locations marked in red. Each activation coincided with the theft of an Excalibur fragment, Zenobia confirmed. And each grew stronger than the last, Issei added. The pattern suggests they're building toward something. Sona nodded. Our analysis indicates a final convergence will occur within the next 48 hours. If the pattern holds, it will be considerably more powerful than the previous 3 combined. "Do you know the location?" Irina asked. Tsubaki produced a second map, this one showing ley lines running through the region. "Based on the pattern of the previous activations and the flow of supernatural energy, we've narrowed it to this area." She indicated a section of forest beyond the city limits, remote and largely uninhabited. "There's an ancient stone circle there," Sona explained. "Predating recorded history, our research suggests it was built on a natural thin point between dimensions. A perfect location for the final convergence," Issei mused. "But what is Dr. Malakor's ultimate goal?" Sona's eyes sharpened. "You've encountered him directly, then." "This morning," Issei confirmed. "He's established a cover identity at Kuo Academy." "Bold," Tsubaki commented. "And concerning. What do you know about him?" Zenobia pressed. Sona adjusted her glasses. "Very little, which is itself telling. He appeared in academic circles approximately 6 months ago with impeccable credentials that, upon closer examination, prove impossible to verify. His knowledge of obscure magical theory is extensive, yet he's unknown to any established supernatural faction. He's a Sith Lord," Issei stated plainly. "A user of the dark side of the Force, an energy field similar to but distinct from the supernatural powers of this world." To her credit, Sona absorbed this information without visible reaction beyond a slight tightening of her lips. "I see. And these Sith, what are their typical objectives?" "Power, primarily. The Sith believe in domination through strength, the strong ruling the weak." Issei leaned forward, but Malakor's interest in convergence points suggests something more specific. He mentioned barriers between dimensions thinning. "I believe he's attempting to create a portal." "To where?" Tsubaki asked. "That's what concerns me most. There are places in the universe, and beyond it, where dark side energy concentrates. Ancient Sith worlds, nexus points of corruption and power. If he's trying to establish a connection to such a place, the implications hung heavily in the air." Even without understanding the specifics, Sona and Tsubaki clearly grasped the danger. "We need to stop the final convergence," Sona decided. "My peerage is prepared to assist." "As are we," Zenobia stated, though her tone suggested limited enthusiasm for working with devils. Issei considered their resources. "We should coordinate with other factions as well. If Kokabile is involved, This threatens the stability of all supernatural groups. The Grimoire heiress has already been informed, Sona confirmed. Though her primary concern is protecting the school and town should conflict spill over. A reasonable precaution, Issei acknowledged. We should establish a perimeter around the stone circle before the convergence begins. If we can disrupt the ritual before it completes. A sudden tremor interrupted him, not physical, but a disturbance in the force so powerful it made Issei wince. Simultaneously, both devils and angels tensed, clearly sensing a parallel disruption in supernatural energies. What was that? Irina asked, her cross weapon appearing in her hand. The fourth convergence point, Issei realized with growing dread. It's activating early. Sona was already on her feet. The timing is wrong. Our calculations were based on the RN established by the first 3 points, Tsubaki finished grimly. If they change the sequence, we need to move now, Issei said, already heading for the door. If the final convergence is beginning early, we have minutes, not hours. Outside, the sky had darkened prematurely, unnatural clouds gathering above the forest to the north. Flashes of light, not lightning, but something else, pulsed within the roiling mass. Transportation circle, Sona ordered, her hands already weaving complex patterns to create a magical array beneath their feet. It will take us as close as I can manage. The array flared with demonic power, enveloping them in crimson light. For a moment, reality seemed to bend and warp, then they were standing in a forest clearing, the stone circle visible 50 meters ahead. What they saw froze them all momentarily. The ancient stones, 12 megaliths arranged in a perfect circle, glowed with eldritch light. Symbols similar to the one they'd found in the church covered their surfaces. Pulsing in sequence, in the center stood Drive. Malachor, arms raised toward the turbulent sky, dark energy swirling around him like living shadow. Surrounding the circle, fallen angels hovered with wings extended, while white-clad figures that could only be stray exorcists formed a perimeter on the ground. And above it all, floating with 6 pairs of midnight wings fully extended, was a figure radiating such malevolent power that the air itself seemed to warp around him. Kokabeel, Zenobia breathed, drawing her massive Excalibur fragment. We're too late to prevent the activation, Issei assessed quickly. But we can still disrupt the ritual. Citri, can your peerage handle the fallen angels? Sona nodded sharply as several transportation circles flared behind them, disgorging the remaining members of the student council, each radiating demonic power prepared for battle. Zenobia, Irina, the stray exorcists are yours, Issei continued. I'll deal with Malachor, and Kokabeel, Tsubaki asked. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Issei decided. For now, our priority is stopping the convergence. Without waiting for further discussion, he drew his lightsaber and ignited it. The azure blade hummed with energy, drawing the attention of several nearby exorcists. Jedi, one of them spat. Lord Malachor said you might interfere. Then he should have prepared you better. Issei replied calmly, then moved. Force-enhanced speed carried him through their line before they could react, his lightsaber deflecting hastily fired bullets back toward their sources. Behind him, he sensed Irina and Zenobia engaging the remaining exorcists while Sona's peerage launched attacks against the fallen angels circling above. Ahead, Drive, Malachor, no, Darth Malachor, continued his ritual, seemingly unconcerned by the battle erupting around him. The air within the stone circle rippled like heat haze, growing more substantial with each passing second. A portal was forming. Issei reached the edge of the circle and leapt, using the force to propel himself over the energy barrier that had begun to form between the stones. As he descended toward Malachor, lightsaber raised, the Sith Lord finally acknowledged his presence. Without turning, Malachor extended one hand. Force lightning, crackling bolts of dark energy, erupted from his fingertips, lashing toward Issei with lethal intent. Issei brought his lightsaber up to intercept, the blade absorbing much of the energy though some still coursed through him, sending searing pain along his nerves. He landed harder than intended, rolling to disperse the impact and regain his footing. You're too late, young Jedi, Malachor stated, finally turning to face him. The Sith's eyes had changed. No longer dark brown but sulphurous yellow ringed with red. The convergence has begun. It can still be stopped, Issei countered, settling into a defensive stance. Why would you want to stop it? Do you even understand what's happening? Malachor gestured toward the forming portal. This world is but one of many, isolated, its potential squandered by petty supernatural factions who think they're little conflicts matter in the grand scheme of the universe. Behind them, the battle raged. Irina's light weapon flashed as she engaged multiple exorcists simultaneously, her movements graceful and precise. Zenobia wielded her Excalibur fragment with devastating power, each swing creating shockwaves that sent opponents flying. Above, Sona's Peerage exchanged energy attacks with fallen angels, the sky itself seeming to burn with competing powers. I'm opening the way to something greater, Malachor continued. The ancient Sith homeworld of Korriban has power your Jedi Masters fear to even acknowledge. With it, I will reshape not just this world, but all worlds connected to it. From his elevated position above the battle, Kokobel laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The arrogance of mortals never ceases to amuse me. You believe you're using us, Sith Lord, but it is we who use you. Issei's danger sense flared. Something was wrong. The convergence energy wasn't flowing into the portal as he expected. It was concentrating around the 3 Excalibur fragments that now floated before Kokobel. A necessary deception, Kokobel called down to them. Your portals served as excellent cover for my true purpose, the corruption and partial reunification of Excalibur's power. For the first time, uncertainty flashed across Malachor's face. That was not our arrangement, Fallen One. Arrangements change, Kokobel replied dismissively. But don't worry, your portal will open. Just not to where you intended. The 3 Excalibur fragments began to merge, holy energy warping and transforming. As Kokobel channeled corrupt power into them, the convergence energies shifted, the portal's destination changing as new coordinates were forced into the metaphysical equation. Issei realized with horror what was happening. He's redirecting the portal to heaven itself. He's trying to create a direct invasion route. Malachor's face contorted with rage. Treacherous angel, you know not what forces you tamper with. The Sith Lord extended both hands, dark force energy erupting from his fingertips toward Kokobel. The fallen angel merely laughed, the corrupted Excalibur fragments forming a shield before him that absorbed the attack. Your power is impressive, Sith. But against divine artifacts, inadequate. The distraction gave Issei an opening. He charged Malachor, lightsaber swinging, in a precise arc toward the Sith's torso. Malachor spun to meet the attack, and for the first time, a crimson lightsaber blazed to life in his hand. The weapons clashed with a distinctive crackling hiss. Red and blue energy blades pressing against each other as both force users tested the other's strength. You're being used, Malachor, Issei said through gritted teeth. Kokobel doesn't want our Sith knowledge. He wants to restart the great war between factions. Do you think I care about their petty religious conflicts? Malachor snarled, pushing back with surprising strength. Let them burn each other to ash. I will salvage power from the ruins. They separated, then clashed again, lightsabers moving faster than ordinary eyes could track. Issei's Form V technique emphasized powerful counterstrikes, turning Malachor's aggression against him. But the Sith was skilled, his mastery of Form 2, Makashi, the duelist's form, evident in his precise economy of movement. Above them, the portal continued to form, its destination flickering between realms as Kokobel and Malachor competed for control of the convergence energies. The very fabric of reality groaned under the strain, dimensional barriers thinning dangerously. Issei caught a glimpse of Irina fighting her way toward them, her angelic power flaring brightly as she dispatched exorcists with increasing desperation. She understood, as he did, the catastrophic consequences if Kokobel succeeded. A direct portal to heaven, created through corrupted holy artifacts and convergence energy, would bypass all of heaven's outer defenses. The resulting invasion could devastate the angelic realm before they could mount an effective response. Issei, Irina called, her voice barely audible above the rising supernatural storm. The fragments. We have to stop the corruption. He understood immediately. The Excalibur fragments were the key, both to Kokobel's plan and potentially to stopping it. Disengaging from Malachor with a force-enhanced backflip, Issei landed beside one of the ancient stones. The Sith pursued, lightsaber carving a burning path through the air toward Issei's head. Issei ducked, then thrust his free hand forward. The force push slammed into Malachor with enough power to send him staggering back several meters, not enough to defeat him, but enough to buy precious seconds. Irina, Issei shouted, channel your holy energy through me. Now. It was a desperate gamble, one that went against conventional wisdom regarding force use and supernatural energies. But Issei had spent years studying the unique interactions between them, developing techniques no other Jedi had attempted. Understanding blazed in Irina's eyes. She fought her way to his side, exorcists falling before her light weapon. This might kill us both, she warned, even as she placed her hand against his. Trust in the Force, he replied, meeting her gaze. And I'll trust in your heaven. Something passed between them in that moment, a connection deeper than either had anticipated. Irina's angelic energy flowed into Issei, not fighting against his force sensitivity but harmonizing with it in ways that defied conventional understanding of both power systems. Issei felt the force respond, swirling around and through him with renewed purpose. The pain was intense, like fire in his veins, but manageable as he directed. The combined energies through his lightsaber. The azure blade transformed, taking on a golden hue that radiated both force energy and holy power in perfect balance. Malachor's eyes widened in genuine shock. Impossible, the Sith breathed. No force user has ever. Issei didn't wait for him to finish. With Irina at his side, their energies still flowing together, he leapt toward Kokabeel, not Malachor. The Sith was a secondary threat now compared to the imminent breach of Heaven's defenses. Kokabeel saw them coming and directed a blast of corrupt energy toward them, but the golden lightsaber cut through it like a hot knife through butter. The fallen angel's confidence faltered for the first time. The fragments, Issei called to Irina as they ascended. Focus on the fragments. Understanding his plan, Irina directed her angelic power through their connection and into the lightsaber. As they reached the apex of their leap, Issei swung the blade in a wide arc that intersected with the floating Excalibur fragments. For a moment, nothing happened. Then holy energy surged from the fragments, responding to Irina's power flowing through Issei's weapon. The corruption Kokabeel had been forcing into them faltered, then began to reverse. No, the fallen angel roared, pouring more corrupt energy into his ritual. The portal flickered violently, its destination shifting between Rey. LMS's control of the convergence point became a three-way battle, Kokabeel trying to direct it to heaven, Malachor attempting to reclaim his original destination, and Issei and Irina working to collapse it entirely. Below, Zenobia had fought her way to the stone circle's edge. Seeing what was happening, she raised her own Excalibur fragment. Destruction, she called, channeling power through the massive blade. With a single devastating swing, she struck the nearest standing stone. The megalith cracked, then shattered, disrupting the perfect circle that channeled the convergence energies. The effect was immediate. The portal's stability faltered, dimensional energies fluctuating wildly. Darth Malachor sensed the danger first. Fools, if the portal collapses uncontrolled. His warning came too late. The convergence energies, no longer properly directed, exploded outward in a shockwave of combined force and supernatural power. Everyone within 100 meters, angels, devils, exorcists, Jedi, and Sith, was thrown violently away from the stone circle. Issei managed to wrap protective force energy around himself and Irina as they fell, cushioning their impact as they crashed through tree branches to the forest floor. Nearby, he sensed Zenobia, Sona, and others similarly thrown clear of the blast zone. When the dust settled and his vision cleared, Issei looked up to see the aftermath. Where the stone circle had stood, a crater now gaped, 30 meters across and smoking with residual energy. Of the Excalibur fragments, Kokabeel, and Darth Malachor, there was no sign. Irina groaned beside him, pushing herself to a sitting position. Despite scrapes and bruises, her angelic nature had protected her from serious injury. Did we stop it? She asked, her voice hoarse. Issei extended his senses cautiously. The convergence energy had dispersed, the dimensional thinning resealed. The immediate threat had ended. We stopped this attempt, he confirmed. But, they escaped. Zenobia finished for him, limping toward them with her Excalibur fragment dragging behind her. Both Kokabeel and your Sith, Sona and her peerage were regrouping nearby, tending to juries and securing fallen exorcists who had survived the blast. Of the fallen angels who had accompanied Kokobile, none remained, either destroyed in the explosion or fled with their leader. The convergence points will recharge eventually, Issei said, helping Irina to her feet. Malachor and Kokobile may have been set back, but they won't abandon their plans. And now they know we can work together to oppose them, Sona added. Approaching with Tsubaki at her side. Both devils showed signs of hard fighting but remained composed. Which makes us targets. Issei looked around at their unlikely alliance, angels, devils, and a Jedi Knight, all who had fought together against a common threat. Such cooperation was unprecedented, yet it had proven effective. Then we continue working together, he proposed. A coalition to monitor for further convergence activities and respond collectively. Sona considered this, then nodded once. Logical. The Cetri clan will support such an arrangement. Heaven will need to be informed. Zenobia stated, but given the circumstances, I believe they will approve limited cooperation. Irina was looking at Issei with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. Something between wonder and concern. And your Jedi Council, will they approve? It was a fair question. The Jedi Order historically maintained distance from local conflicts, intervening only when necessary to preserve larger balance. But the involvement of a Sith Lord changed everything. They'll understand the necessity, Issei said with more confidence than he felt. Especially now that we know Malachor's objective, opening a portal to Korriban would have catastrophic consequences beyond this world. As the group began organizing their departure, Irina drew Issei slightly aside. What you did, she said quietly. Combining our powers like that, is that even possible? I mean, according to everything I've been taught about angelic energy. It shouldn't have been, he admitted. Force sensitivity and supernatural powers are distinct systems that typically remain separate. He looked down at his lightsaber, still feeling echoes of their combined energy within the crystal. But something about the convergence point, about us specifically, it created a harmony I can't fully explain. Irina studied him with those violet eyes that somehow retained the innocence he remembered from childhood. Despite all she must have seen since. Perhaps some connections transcend conventional understanding, she suggested. Then, more hesitantly, when we were connected like that, I felt. I don't know how to describe it. Like I knew you, not just the you from our childhood, but who you are now, beneath all the Jedi training. The observation disturbed his Jedi composure more than he wanted to admit. Such connections, personal, emotional, were precisely what his training had taught him to avoid. Yet in that moment of crisis, their connection had been their strength, not a weakness. We should focus on the immediate concerns, he deflected gently. Malachor and Kokobile are still out there. Both wounded, both angry, both likely to regroup and try again. Of course, she agreed. Though disappointment flickered briefly across her features. Duty first. As they rejoined the others, Issei found himself contemplating the path ahead. The threat they faced was unprecedented, a Sith Lord manipulating supernatural factions toward catastrophic ends. Countering it would require continued cooperation between groups that had been adversaries for millennia. And for him personally, it would mean navigating his growing connection to Irina, a connection the Jedi Code warned against, yet which had proven crucial in their first major confrontation. The sun was rising now, golden light filtering through the trees and illuminating the destruction left by the failed convergence. A new day, bringing new challenges and, perhaps, new possibilities. We should return to Kuo, Sona suggested. Establish communication protocols and begin monitoring for any sign of their return. As they prepared to depart, Issei cast one last look at the crater where the stone circle had stood. The Force whispered warnings of things yet to come. Battles more difficult, choices more challenging, connections more profound. Whatever path lay ahead, one thing was certain, nothing would be the same again. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Sacred Bonds. Morning light filtered through partially drawn curtains, casting geometric patterns across Issei's sparse apartment. He sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed. Lightsaber components arranged in a perfect circle before him. Each piece hovered centimeters above the wooden surface, suspended by his careful manipulation of the Force. The events at the stone circle 3 days ago had damaged his weapon, not structurally, but energetically. The unprecedented melding of force energy and Irina's angelic power had created resonance patterns within the kyber crystal that still hadn't stabilized. He could feel the disturbance each time he connected with his lightsaber, like an instrument slightly out of tune. Slowly, methodically, He disassembled the floating components further, until even the smallest power regulator and focusing lens orbited around the central crystal. The azure kyber pulsed with internal light, stronger than usual, occasionally flaring with hints of gold, echoes of Irina's holy energy. Curious, he murmured, extending his awareness deeper into the crystal's structure. The kyber had always responded to him on levels beyond the physical. But now it seemed almost awakened. More conscious, more alive, his comm unit chimed, breaking his concentration. The lightsaber parts descended gently to the floor as he rose to answer. Master Katar's holographic form appeared, expression grave. Knight Hyodo, your report was concerning. The situation continues to develop, Master, Issei replied with a respectful inclination of his head. Darth Malachor survived the Convergence collapse, though his current location remains unknown. A Sith Lord manipulating supernatural factions is unprecedented, Katar stroked his beard thoughtfully. More troubling is your description of the portal he attempted to create. If he succeeded in establishing a connection to Korriban, the dark side energy would corrupt this entire region. Issei finished. Possibly the planet itself, given Earth's unique force properties. Indeed, the Council has discussed your report at length. We are dispatching additional resources. But given the distance, you must continue alone for now. Katar's image flickered slightly. There is another matter. You mentioned combining your force abilities with angelic energy during the confrontation. Issei maintained a neutral expression despite his inner tension. It was a tactical necessity, Master. The situation required immediate action. Perhaps. Katar studied him through the hologram. But such combinations are historically unstable. The ancient texts speak of force users who attempted similar feats with catastrophic consequences. I've been monitoring the effects closely. Issei assured him. The resonance patterns are unusual but not dangerous. See that they remain so, Katar advised. Remember your training, Knight Hyodo. Emotional attachment. Ents cloud judgment and lead to the dark side. This angel, Irina Shidou, represents a connection to your past before Jedi training. Be mindful of your feelings. Yes, Master. After the communication ended, Issei remained standing by the window, watching early morning commuters on the street below. Master Katar's warning wasn't unexpected, but it left him unsettled nonetheless. The Jedi code was clear. There is no emotion. There is peace. Attachment was forbidden because it led to fear of loss, which led to anger, which led to suffering, the path to the dark side. He had accepted these teachings without question throughout his training. Yet during the battle at the Stone Circle, when his energy had merged with Irina's, he'd felt something beyond the mechanical combination of two power sources. He'd felt completion, harmony, as if the Force itself approved of their connection. Turning back to his disassembled lightsaber, Issei centered himself in the Force once more. Whatever Tyons troubled him about Jedi doctrine and his growing connection to Irina, his immediate duty remained clear. Find Malachor, stop whatever the Sith Lord was planning next, and protect the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. The lightsaber components rose into the air again, beginning their careful dance of reassembly. Kuo Academy hummed with normality that Issei knew was merely a fragile veneer. Students chatted about upcoming exams and weekend plans, oblivious to the supernatural battles that had raged days before. He moved through the crowded hallways with practiced invisibility, his force presence muted to avoid detection. Darth Malachor had not returned to his cover identity as Dr. Malachor. The faculty had been told he'd received an urgent call from his university and departed indefinitely. Most had already forgotten the brief appearance of the visiting researcher. Issei-kun. Irina's voice cut through his thoughts as she approached, Zenobia silent and watchful at her side. To casual observers, they appeared to be ordinary transfer students. Only Issei could sense the tension radiating from them both, particularly Zenobia. Good morning, he greeted them with a careful smile. How are the accommodations working out? After the Convergence battle, the church representatives had relocated from their initial lodgings to a safe house closer to Kuo Academy. E-move was strategic, allowing quicker response to threats while maintaining their cover as students. Adequate, Zenobia replied curtly. Her injuries from the battle had healed remarkably quickly, thanks to her angelic constitution. But her mood remained grim. The failure to recover the Excalibur fragments weighed heavily on her. Irina, by contrast, maintained her cheerful demeanor despite the circumstances. It's quite comfortable, though I miss having a proper kitchen. Remember how my mom used to make those special pancakes on Sundays, Issei-kun? With the little chocolate chips shaped like stars. The casual reference to their shared childhood caught him off guard. For a moment, he was transported back. A smaller, simpler Issei sitting at the Shidou family's kitchen table, laughing as Irina's mother served them breakfast. Before the Force, before the Jedi, before angels and devils and the weight of protecting galactic balance. I remember, he admitted, the words escaping before He could filter them through his Jedi reserve. Irina beamed, violet eyes brightening. We should cook together sometime. I'm not as good as Mom, but I learned a few things in England. Perhaps when our mission is complete. Zenobia interjected, her tone making clear she considered such domestic plans premature at best. The warning bell rang, saving Issei from responding. As they headed toward their classroom, he felt a familiar presence observing from nearby, Tsubaki Shinra, monitoring from a discreet distance. Since the battle, the Devils had maintained a watchful interest in the Angel's activities and in Issei particularly. Their investigation was understandable. Until the Convergence battle, he'd successfully maintained his cover as an ordinary student. Now that Sona Citri and her peerage knew of his Jedi abilities, they naturally wanted to assess whether he represented a threat or an ally. What troubled him more was the second presence he sensed, fainter, carefully masked, but unmistakable to his trained perception. Someone else was watching, someone with power different from devil or angel energy. Not Malachor, the signature lacked the dark side corruption he'd recognize instantly. Someone new had entered the game. History class dragged interminably. The teacher's lecture on the Meiji Restoration held little interest for Issei, who had studied far more extensive historical archives during his Jedi training. Instead, he divided his attention between maintaining his student persona and subtly scanning for the mysterious presence he'd sensed earlier. Beside him, Irina took diligent notes, occasionally glancing his way with quick smiles that suggested private thoughts. On her other side, Zenobia stared blankly ahead, likely focused on their mission rather than 19th-century Japanese politics. When the lunch bell finally rang, Issei rose smoothly from his seat. There's something I need to check, he murmured to Irina. Meet me on the roof in 15 minutes. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Be careful. He made his way through crowded hallways toward the library, the last place he'd sensed the unknown observer. The room was quiet, populated by a handful of students studying in hushed isolation. Issei moved casually between shelves, extending his awareness through the force. There, in the reference section, a presence both familiar and alien. He rounded the corner and found himself facing a young woman with long silver hair pulled into a neat ponytail. She wore a formal suit that seemed oddly out of place among the school uniforms, and carried herself with military precision. When she looked up from the ancient tome she'd been examining, Issei found himself meeting penetrating gray-blue eyes that widened slightly in recognition. You sensed me, she stated rather than asked, her Japanese perfect despite a faint accent he placed as Scandinavian. Impressive. You weren't exactly hiding, Issei replied, keeping his voice low. Though you did mask your energy signature quite effectively. A slight smile curved her lips. Not effectively enough, it seems. She closed the book carefully, revealing its title, Comparative Metaphysical Resonance Patterns in Eastern Mysticism. That's rather specialized reading for a high school library, Issei observed. Indeed, I was surprised to find it here. She studied him with analytical precision. You're not what I expected. And what did you expect, Ms. Rossweiss? She extended her hand in Western fashion. Former Valkyrie of Asgard, currently researching anomalous energy patterns in this region. Issei accepted the handshake, noting the calluses that spoke of weapons training and the controlled strength in her grip. Issei Hyodo. But you already knew that. Your name, yes. Your nature, no. Her gaze intensified. You're neither human nor devil nor angel, yet you wield power that disrupted a dimensional convergence powerful enough to register in Asgard. Naturally, that piqued our interest. Our Norse interests, she clarified. Though I'm operating independently at present, Odin prefers that I verify threats before troubling him with reports. The reference confirmed Issei's suspicion that she had been a bodyguard to the Norse All-Father, a prestigious position for a Valkyrie, suggesting exceptional combat and magical abilities. And am I considered a threat? He asked calmly. Rosweiss tilted her head slightly. That remains to be determined. Your energy signature is unlike anything in our records, similar to Sayre in some respects, yet fundamentally different. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. More importantly, you fought against the convergence rather than exploiting it, which suggests ethical considerations I find reassuring. Before Issei could respond, the library door opened to admit several students. Rosweiss straightened, her demeanor shifting seamlessly to professional formality. We should continue this discussion elsewhere, she suggested. Perhaps after school hours. I'm staying at the Silverguard Hotel downtown, room 712. I may have other obligations, Issei demurred, thinking of H's planned meeting with Irina and Zenobia. Bring your angel friends if you wish, Rosweiss replied with a knowing smile. My research into the convergence energies might prove useful to your hunt for the missing Excalibur fragments. With that, she nodded politely and departed, leaving Issei to contemplate this new development. A Valkyrie researcher interested in the convergence energies add another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. Yet her knowledge of Norse mysticism might indeed provide insights they lacked. The Force offered no clear guidance, only a sense at Rosweiss would play a significant role in events to come. The school rooftop offered privacy and a commanding view of Kuo town. Issei arrived to find Irina already waiting, her chestnut hair stirred by the gentle breeze as she gazed across the urban landscape. The town looks so peaceful from up here, she observed as he joined her at the railing. Hard to believe what's happening beneath the surface. People see what they expect to see, Issei replied. It's a defense mechanism, the mind filtering out anything that challenges its understanding of reality. Irina turned to face him, violet eyes searching his. Is that what happened to us? We grew up together, but neither of us saw what the other would become. The question struck closer to his core than he anticipated. I didn't know what I was then. The Force was always there, but dormant, unrecognized. When did you know? Her voice softened. When did they take you for training? 3 months after you left for England. The memory surfaced with unexpected clarity. His first encounter with Master Qatar, the demonstrations of Force abilities that had explained so many strange occurrences in his childhood, the choice presented to his parents. A scout identified my Force sensitivity during that incident at the river. Irina's eyes widened in recognition. When you saved me from drowning, I slipped on those rocks, and somehow you reached me before I went under, even though you were 30 meters away. My first significant Force use, he confirmed. Though I didn't understand it then. You always were my hero. Her smile held a wistfulness that stirred something in him. Even before you had a lightsaber. The door to the stairwell opened before Issei could respond, admitting Zenobia, whose expression suggested urgency. We have a development, she announced without preamble. The church has identified a possible location for one of the Excalibur fragments. An abandoned warehouse in the Indus Trial District shows traces of holy energy consistent with Excalibur rapidly. Issei considered this news. Kokabeel wouldn't leave a fragment unguarded. Obviously, Zenobia agreed, but after the convergence failure, his forces may be scattered, regrouping. This could be our opportunity to recover at least one fragment. When do we move? Irina asked, instantly transitioning to mission focus. After nightfall, the warehouse district will be empty then. Issei nodded. I'll accompany you. He hesitated, then added, I also made contact with the individual I sensed this morning, a Valkyrie named Rosweiss. She's researching the convergence energies and might have information useful to our mission. Zenobia frowned. Norse involvement complicates matters, or provides valuable perspective, Irina countered. If she knows something about these convergence points that could help us track the fragments. She's invited us to meet with her after school, Issei added. Before our warehouse operation, Zenobia clearly disliked the idea but nodded reluctantly. Very well, but we maintain operational security. The Church's mission takes priority over Norse curiosity. Agreed, Issei said, though I suspect her interest goes beyond curiosity. The convergence energies registered in Asgard, that suggests effects far beyond local concerns. The bell-ending lunch period echoed across the rooftop. As they turned to leave, Irina touched Issei's arm lightly. We never finished our conversation, she said softly. About what happened to us after I left. Perhaps another time, he replied, gentle but firm. When we're not preparing for a mission. Her slight nod held acceptance tinged with disappointment. As they descended the stairs, Issei found himself uncomfortably aware of the growing complexity of his connection to Irina, a complexity the Jedi Code offered little guidance for navigating. The Silverguard Hotel rose 20 stories above downtown Kuo, its modernist glass facade reflecting the orange glow of sunset. Issei, Irina, and Zenobia approached the lobby with cautious awareness, scanning for potential threats. Room 712, Issei reminded them as they entered an elevator. She's expecting us. I still don't like involving outsiders, Zenobia muttered, adjusting the wrapped Excalibur destruction she carried in a specialized case designed to mask its energy signature. The Norse have their own agenda. Everyone has an agenda, Issei replied calmly. Understanding hers might help us understand the larger picture. The elevator ascended smoothly to the 7th floor. They moved down the carpeted hallway until reaching room 712. Before Issei could knock, the door opened to reveal Rosweiss, now dressed in a more casual outfit of tailored slacks and a deep blue blouse. Right on time, she noted with approval. Please, enter. The hotel suite had been transformed into a makeshift research center. One wall was covered with maps showing energy flow patterns across Kuo and surrounding regions. Another displayed complex magical formulas and calculations. The dining table held an array of ancient texts, some of which Issei recognized as Norse runic codices. Impressive setup for someone who arrived recently, he observed. I believe in thorough preparation, Rosweiss replied, gesturing for them to sit. And in mutual exchange of information when facing common threats. Zenobia remained standing, arms crossed. What makes you think we face a common threat? Because dimensional stability affects all realms, including Asgard, Rosweiss answered evenly. The convergence point that collapsed 3 days ago created ripples across multiple planes of existence. Had it fully activated as intended, the consequences would have been far-reaching. How much do you know about what happened? Irina asked. Rosweiss moved to the map wall, indicating points marked with different colored pins. I know that 3 preliminary convergence points activated in sequence, culminating in the major event at the stone circle. I know that holy artifacts, the Excalibur fragments, were used as catalysts. And I know, she turned to face Issei directly, that a power source unfamiliar to our records was instrumental in disrupting the final convergence. You've been thorough, Issei acknowledged. But why personal interest? Surely Asgard has other agents available. Something flickered across Rosweiss's expression, a brief shadow quickly controlled. Let's call it academic curiosity. My specialty is comparative magical stems, how different mythological frameworks interact with universal energy constants. And Jedi abilities represent an unknown variable in your equations, Issei surmised. Precisely. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her serious countenance. Few things excite a researcher more than discovering an entirely new energy paradigm. Irina stepped forward, her natural friendliness asserting itself. We're planning to recover one of the stolen Excalibur fragments tonight. Your research might help us understand what Kokabeel intends to do with them next. Zenobia shot her a warning glance. But Irina continued undeterred. The convergence failed, but the fragments still contain immense holy power. If Kokabeel attempts another ritual, he will, Rosweiss stated with certainty. The pattern of energy fluctuations I've been monitoring suggests preparation for another significant event. She moved to the table, retrieving a leather-bound journal. According to my calculations, the failed convergence actually imprinted the fragments with residual energy, making them more powerful, not less. This caught Issei's attention, similar to what happened to my lightsaber crystal. Rosweiss's eyes sharpened with interest. Your weapon was affected, he nodded. The Kyber crystal absorbed some of the convergence energy, particularly when Irina's angelic power flowed through it. Fascinating. Rossweiss made a quick note in her journal. That suggests your force and angelic energy have compatible resonance patterns, theoretically impossible according to established magical frameworks. Yet it happened, Irina affirmed. I felt it too, like our energies recognized each other. Zenobia cleared her throat impatiently. This theoretical discussion is interesting. But we have a mission to prepare for. What can you tell us about the warehouse district? Any energy signatures consistent with Excalibur fragments? Rossweiss accepted the redirect gracefully. Moving to her maps, she indicated an industrial area at the city's edge. There's definitely unusual energy concentrated here, holy power with corruption patterns similar to what I'd expect from fallen angel influence. However, she frowned slightly, there's something else overlaying it. A signature I can't quite identify. Malachor, Issei suggested grimly. The Sith Lord. Possibly, Rossweiss agreed. Though if so, he's masking his presence more effectively than before. She offered them detailed satellite imagery of the warehouse complex, highlighting security measures and potential entry points with professional precision. Issei noted her tactical analysis reflected military training beyond academic research, confirming his assessment of her as more than a simple scholar. This is valuable intelligence, he acknowledged. Thank you. I'd like to accompany you, Rossweiss stated, her tone making clear it wasn't really a request. Observing these energies in action would significantly advance my research. Zenobia immediately shook her head. Out of the question. This is a church operation. That already includes a Jedi Knight, Rossweiss countered smoothly. I'm fearing additional support from someone with specialized knowledge of convergence energies and, she added with a hint of pride, considerable combat experience. Unless you believe a former Valkyrie would be a liability. The challenge hung in the air between them. Issei sensed Zenovia's frustration warring with practical considerations. An additional ally with Rossweiss's capabilities could indeed prove valuable, especially if they encountered both Kokobil's forces and Malachor. I think we should accept her help, Irina offered diplomatically. Knowledge is power, especially against Enem. IEs as formidable as the ones we're facing. After a moment of tense silence, Zenobia relented. Fine, but you follow our lead, and if we encounter the Excalibur fragment, recovery takes absolute priority. Understood. Rossweiss's smile held satisfaction. When do we leave? Darkness enveloped the industrial district, broken only by occasional security lights casting harsh shadows across cracked concrete. 4 figures moved silently between abandoned buildings, approaching their target with careful precision. Issei led the way, his force senses extended to detect any sentries or alarm systems. Behind him, Irina and Zenobia maintained alert readiness, their weapons concealed but accessible. Rossweiss brought up the rear, a faint shimmer of Norse magic surrounding her hands as S. He continuously scanned for energy signatures. The warehouse is just ahead, Issei murmured, indicating a large structure with boarded windows and chained doors. I sense multiple presences inside, at least 8, possibly more. Stray exorcists, Zenobia determined, her hand moving to the wrapped form of Excalibur destruction. Their energy signatures are distinctive, human, but corrupted. The fragment is definitely inside. Rossweiss confirmed. I can detect its holy signature, though it's muted somehow. Suppressed. Irina frowned. That's not normal. Excalibur fragments radiate POW are continuously unless specifically sealed. Which suggests they're using it for something, Issei concluded. Something that requires containing its energy until the right moment. They circled the warehouse, identifying a loading dock with minimal security as their entry point. Issei approached the rolling metal door, extending his hand toward the electronic lock mechanism. With subtle manipulation through the force, he triggered the internal components to release without activating the security system. Impressive, Rossweiss commented softly as the door slid open just enough for them to slip underneath. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous and dimly lit. Shipping containers and wooden crates created a labyrinth of potential cover and ambush points. The air hung heavy with dust and something else, a metallic tang that made the force itself seem to recoil. Issei signaled for them to stay close as he navigated toward the center of the facility, where the presences he'd sensed were concentrated. As they drew nearer, voices became audible, Harsh laughter and crude jokes interspersed with more serious discussion. Still don't see why we can't just use it, one voice complained. With rapidly, I could take out a dozen devils before they knew what hit them. Because Lord Kokabeel has other plans for it, idiot, another replied. Touch it without authorization and you'll answer to Freed. Speaking of which, where is that psycho? Wasn't he supposed to check in hours ago? The four intruders exchanged glances. Freed Selzen, a notorious stray exorcist known for sadist, Issei cruelty and effectiveness, was a significant threat on his own. His absence might represent an opportunity. They reached a vantage point behind stacked crates that allowed them to observe a cleared area in the warehouse center. There, 8 stray exorcists lounged around a central object that drew all their attention, a cylindrical container approximately 1 meter tall, constructed of dark metal inscribed with glowing sigils. Atop the container rested a sword with an ornate hilt, unmistakably one of the Excalibur fragments. Excalibur rapidly, Zenobia confirmed in a whisper. Known for granting its wielder exceptional speed. Those sigils on the container, Rossweiss murmured, they're designed to harness and redirect the fragment's energy. Similar to what we saw at the convergence points, but more focused. Can you tell what they're preparing for? Irina asked. Rossweiss studied the setup with narrowed eyes. Not specifically, but the configuration suggests energy accumulation rather than immediate use. They're charging something. Issei considered their options. 8 exorcists represented a manageable threat for their group, but the unknown purpose of the energy containment system complicated matters. Disrupting it carelessly might trigger unexpected consequences. We need to secure the fragment and capture at least one exorcist for interrogation, he decided. Irina, Zenobia, you approach from the right and create a diversion. Rossweiss and I will circle left to flank them and secure the fragment. Be careful with the containment unit, Rossweiss warned. If those sigils are disrupted improperly, the accumulated energy could discharge violently. With the plan established, they split into pairs. Issei and Rossweiss moved silently through the shadows, using stacked crates for cover as they circled toward the fragment. From the opposite direction, Irina and Zenobia prepared their diversion. It came in spectacular fashion. Zenobia unwrapped Excalibur Destruction, its massive form instantly radiating holy power that filled the warehouse with brilliant light. Simultaneously, Irina transformed her cross into its ribbon-like weapon form, the Gaul. Den energy whip cutting through the air with a distinctive crack. In the name of heaven, surrender the stolen Excalibur. Irina called out, her voice carrying authority beyond her years. The exorcists reacted with practiced speed, drawing light swords and pistols as they scrambled for defensive positions. Their leader, a burly man with a scarred face, barked orders as he raised a modified shotgun toward the angels. Kill them. Protect the fragment. Chaos erupted as exorcists opened fire while Irina and Zenobia advanced, holy weapons deflecting bullets with precision. The diversion worked perfectly, drawing all attention away from the opposite approach where Issei and Rossweiss closed on the containment unit. Cover me, Issei murmured, lightsaber in hand but not yet activated. I'll secure the fragment. Rossweiss nodded, magic circles forming around her hands as she prepared defensive spells. Be quick, that energy is becoming increasingly unstable. Issei moved with force-enhanced speed, crossing the remaining distance to the container in a blur. 2 exorcists noticed his approach too late, turning just as he delivered precise strikes to pressure points that rendered them unconscious without permanent damage. The fragment was now within reach, its holy energy pulsing in patterns that resonated strangely with the force. As he extended his hand toward it, however, warning flashed through his senses. Danger, immediate and lethal. He ignited his lightsaber just in time to deflect a bullet aimed at his head. The azure blade hummed with energy as he spun to face this new threat. Well, a voice sing-song from the shadows. If it isn't the mysterious power boy from the church. Kokabeel said you might show up. The speaker stepped into the light, a man with short white hair, maniacal eyes, and a grin that bordered on psychotic. He wielded 2 light swords with casual expertise, twirling them in elaborate patterns as he approached. Freed Selzen, Issei identified, settling into a defensive stance. Ooh, I'm famous. I'm so honored. Freed's grin widened impossibly further. But you're a mystery wrapped in an enigma dipped in what the fuck are you sauce? He cocked his head curiously. Not an angel, not a devil, but strong enough to interest Lord Kokobile. I'm going to enjoy cutting you into tiny pieces to see what makes you tick. Across the warehouse, Irina and Zenobia had engaged the remaining exorcists in close combat. Zenovia's massive blade crashed through crates and equipment with devastating force, while Irina's more agile fighting style allowed her to engage multiple opponents simultaneously. Neither could disengage to assist Issei. Rossweiss stepped forward, Nordic runes circling her form as she prepared combat magic. I'll handle the fragment. You deal with him. Fried noticed her for the first time. Another player joins the game. A Valkyrie, no less. Kokobile didn't mention you. His smile never faltered, as he reached into his coat and withdrew a pistol with his left hand, maintaining one light sword in his right. More fun for me. He moved with unnatural speed, firing 3 shots at Rossweiss while simultaneously lunging toward Issei with his light sword. The bullets impacted a runic shield that materialized before the Valkyrie, while Issei parried the sword strike with his lightsaber. The weapons clashed with a sound like screaming metal, light energy meeting lightsaber plasma in a shower of sparks. Fried's eyes widened momentarily at the unfamiliar weapon before his manic grin returned. Fancy laser sword, I want one. He disengaged and attacked again, his fighting style wild and unpredictable, switching between disciplined exorcist techniques and berserker-like aggression without warning. Issei met each strike with the measured precision of gems, so using his opponent's aggression against him while conserving his own energy. Meanwhile, Rossweiss had reached the containment unit. Her hands moved in complex patterns as she analyzed the sigils, occasionally deflecting stray attacks with casual flicks of defensive magic. This is more complicated than I thought, she called to Issei. The fragment's energy is linked to something else, somewhere else. If I remove it improperly, it could trigger a cascade reaction. Can you disrupt the linkage? Issei asked, deflecting another furious combination from Fried. Yes, but I need time. Fried laughed maniacally. Time's something you don't have, pretty Valkyrie. Lord Kokobile planned for interruptions. He pressed a device on his wrist, triggering flashing red lights throughout the warehouse. 2-minute self-destruct. Either the fragment completes its purpose, or everything goes boom. The announcement transformed the battlefield instantly. The remaining exorcists broke combat and fled toward exits, abandoning their defense of the fragment. Irina and Zenobia fought their way toward Issei and Rossweiss, cutting down opponents who didn't retreat fast enough. He's bluffing, Zenobia declared as she reached them. Rossweiss shook her head grimly, hands still working to disrupt the sigils. No, he's not. Here are demolition charges throughout the building, and they're activating. Fried used the momentary distraction to launch another attack at Issei, this one more desperate and therefore more dangerous. His light sword slipped past Issei's guard, scoring a burning line across his shoulder before the Jedi could re-establish his defense. First blood to me, Fried crowed, but I think I'll leave you to the fireworks. Lord Kokobile will be so disappointed he missed the show. With that, he threw down a flashbang grenade that momentarily blinded them all. By the time their vision cleared, he had vanished. 1 minute, Rossweiss announced tensely. The linkage is complex, designed to channel the fragment's energy toward multiple secondary locations simultaneously. Like the other fragments, Irina suggested, moving to guard Rossweiss while she worked. Exactly. They're creating a distributed network rather than a single convergence point. Rossweiss's hands glowed with increasing intense magic as she forced her will against the sigils. It's ingenious, actually, much harder to disrupt than their previous attempt. Less admiration, more disabling, Zenobia urged, eyeing the blinking charges attached to nearby support columns. Issei extended his senses through the force, mapping the building's structure and the location of explosives. Even if we disable the linkage, we won't have time to defuse all the charges. We need to secure the fragment and evacuate. Almost there, Rossweiss muttered, sweat beading on her forehead as she poured more power into her counterspell. Just need to. There. The sigils on the containment unit flared brilliantly, then faded to dull scratches in the metal. The Excalibur fragment atop it pulsed once with holy light before settling into its natural radiance. It's safe to move now, Rossweiss confirmed. The linkage is broken. Zenobia immediately seized the fragment, securing it within a blessed cloth. 30 seconds remaining. Move. They ran for the nearest exit, Issei taking the lead to clear obstacles with force-enhanced strength. Behind them, the first charges began to detonate, sending shockwaves through the warehouse structure. Support beams groaned as the building began to collapse around them. This way, Issei called, sensing a clear path through his force awareness. They reached a side door just as the main charges ignited, the concussive force throwing them forward into the night air. Issei instinctively wrapped force energy around the group, cushioning their landing as they tumbled across asphalt. The warehouse imploded behind them, flames erupting skyward as its roof collapsed inward. Secondary explosions continued inside, ensuring nothing would survive the inferno. For several moments, they lay catching their breath, the heat of the blaze washing over them in waves. Sirens wailed in the distance, emergency services responding to the explosion. "We should leave before authorities arrive," Zenobia said, rising to her feet with Excalibur rapidly still clutched securely against her chest. Issei nodded agreement, wincing slightly as the movement aggravated the burn across his shoulder. The light sword wound wasn't deep, but it stung fiercely. "You're injured," Irina noticed immediately, moving to his side with concern. "It's minor," he assured her, though he accepted her support as they retreated from the burning warehouse. Rossweiss led them to a silver sedan parked several blocks away. "My vehicle," she explained, unlocking it with a wave of her hand. "It has protective wards that will shield the fragment's energy signature from detection." They piled in gratefully, Zenobia clutching the recovered Excalibur fragment while Irina examined Issei's wound in the back seat. "Where to?" Rossweiss asked as she started the engine. "The church safe house," Zenobia decided after a moment's consideration. "We need to secure the fragment properly, and it has the necessary facilities." As they drove through darkened streets, Issei contemplated their partial victory. They'd recovered one fragment, but the larger picture remained troubling. Kokabeel was implementing a distributed network of energy linkages rather than a single convergence point, a more sophisticated approach that would be harder to counter. And Malachor remained unaccounted for. The Sith Lord hadn't appeared at the warehouse, but his influence was evident in the technical sophistication of the linkage system. It bore hallmarks of force techniques adapted to supernatural energies, a dangerous synthesis only someone with Malachor's unique knowledge could achieve. "You're thinking too hard," Irina murmured beside him, her fingers gently cleaning his wound with supplies from a first aid kit Rossweiss had provided. "I can practically hear the gears turning." Despite himself, Issei smiled faintly. "Just analyzing what we learned." "And what's your conclusion?" Rossweiss asked from the driver's seat, eyes meeting his in the rearview mirror. "That we've won a skirmish, not the war," he replied soberly. "Kokabeel and Malachor are implementing a backup plan, one potentially more dangerous than their first attempt. But we're one step ahead now," Irina reminded him, her optimism irrepressible as she finished dressing his wound. "We have one fragment secured, and thanks to Rossweiss, we understand more about their linkage system." "Indeed," the Valkyrie agreed. "With this data, I can recalibrate my detection spells to track similar energy patterns. We might locate the remaining fragments before they complete their network." Zenobia remained silent, her focus entirely on the recovered fragment. Issei sensed her relief at completing part of her mission tinged with frustration that two fragments remained missing. As they approached the outskirts of town where the safe house was located, Issei's comm unit chimed softly. Master Qatar would be expecting an update, but that conversation would need to wait until he had privacy. The Jedi Council remained unaware of his growing network of allies from supernatural factions, a detail he deliberately omitted from his reports. Such omissions troubled his conscience, yet he couldn't shake the conviction that his current path, while unorthodox by Jedi standards, was guided by the Force itself. The connections he was forming with Irina, with Rossweiss, even with devils like Sona Sitri, all felt necessary, even vital, to countering the threat Malachor represented. The question that haunted him, however, was whether these connections served the light side of the Force, or were subtly drawing him toward the dark. The church safe house was a modest two-story residence on a quiet street, its exterior deliberately unremarkable. Inside, however, specialized wards and security systems made it one of the most protected locations in Kuo. Holy symbols were incorporated subtly into the decor, their power woven into the very structure of the building. The fragments should be secured in the basement vault, Zenobia announced as they entered. It has specific containment fields designed for holy artifacts. Ross, Visa examined the wards with professional interest as they passed through the entry hall. Impressive work, seamless integration of multiple protective paradigms. The church has refined these techniques over centuries, Irina explained with quiet pride. This safe house has withstood 3 devil attacks in its history without a single breach. Yet you invite a Valkyrie and a Jedi inside, Rossweiss noted with amusement. Times change. Necessity dictates adaptation, Zenobia replied pragmatically. She led them downstairs to a reinforced door inscribed with ancient Hebrew characters. Lacing her palm against a specific symbol, she murmured a prayer in Latin. The door responded to her angelic energy, swinging open to reveal a chamber lined with blessed silver. In the center stood a pedestal designed specifically for Excalibur fragments. Zenobia placed rapidly upon it reverently, activating containment fields that would prevent its energy from being detected or manipulated from outside. 1 down, 2 to go, Irina said softly. Transparency and Nightmare remain missing. At least we've disrupted their network, Issei observed. That should delay whatever they're planning. Rossweiss had moved to examine inscriptions on the vault walls. These containment fields might be modified to help locate the other fragments, she suggested. With your permission, I could add to Nay detection spells to rapidly specific resonance frequency. Since all Excalibur fragments share a common origin, they retain harmonic similarities. Zenobia hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with a lowing outside manipulation of church facilities. After a moment, however, she nodded reluctantly. If it helps recover the remaining fragments, do it. But I'll monitor every step. While Rossweiss, and Zenobia worked on the detection spells, Irina led Issei upstairs to the safehouse's modest kitchen. You should eat something, she insisted, rummaging through cupboards. Force user or not, you lost blood today. He didn't resist as she prepared a simple meal of rice and miso soup, supplemented with protein bars from the safehouse's emergency supplies. The domesticity of the scene struck him as incongruous. 2 childhood friends sharing a late-night meal, one an angel, one a Jedi, both exhausted from battling stray exorcists and recovering stolen holy artifacts. Just like old times, Irina commented as if reading his thoughts. She placed a steaming bowl before him. Well, except for the whole supernatural war part. Issei accepted the food gratefully. Not quite how I imagined reconnecting when we were children. No, she sat across from him, violet eyes reflecting the soft kitchen lighting. What did you imagine? The question was innocent, yet fraught with implications. What had young Issei, before Jedi training, imagined about Irina's return? He searched memories long suppressed during his years focusing on Force disciplines. I think I expected we'd just continue, he admitted finally. That you'd come back from England, we'd pick up our friendship, and life would go on normally. Maybe we'd attend the same high school, study together, grow up together. Grow old together, Irina suggested softly, a hint of wistfulness in her tone. Issei met her gaze, finding himself unable to deflect the question with Jedi detachment. Perhaps, before I understood what I was, what you would become, yes. I think that was the natural assumption of a child's mind. She smiled, though a shadow of something, regret, acceptance, passed behind her eyes. And now, what does the Jedi Knight imagine when he thinks of the future? The code teaches us not to dwell on imagined futures, he replied automatically, then paused, recognizing the evasion for what it was. More honestly, he continued. But when I allow myself to look beyond the immediate mission, I don't know, Irina. The path of a Jedi is traditionally solitary. We serve the Force, maintain balance, avenue. OID attachments that might cloud judgment. Sounds lonely, she observed, stirring her soup thoughtfully. It can be, he acknowledged. Though the Jedi tradition teaches that we're never truly alone when connected to the Force. The Church teaches something similar about God's presence, Irina said. Yet angels form bonds, friendships, even partnerships. Total isolation isn't required for divine service. The parallels and differences between their paths hung in the air between them, unspoken yet palpable. Both served higher purposes, Both followed ancient traditions, both wielded powers beyond ordinary human capacity. Yet their traditions diverged on fundamental questions about connection and attachment. When our energies merged at the stone circle, Irina continued after a moment, her voice softer, it felt right. Like two pieces of something meant to work together. Did you feel that too? Issei hesitated, Jedi caution warring with his innate honesty. I did, he admitted finally. It contradicts much of what I was taught about Force energy and its interaction with other power sources. Yet in that moment, there was harmony I can't fully explain. She reached across the table, her fingers lightly touching his hand. The contact sent a subtle current between them, not supernatural energy this time, but something equally powerful. Perhaps some traditions need reconsideration in light of new evidence. She suggested gently. Even ancient wisdom evolves when confronted with new truths. Before Issei could respond, footsteps on the stairs announced Rosweiss and Zenovia's return from the vault. Irina withdrew her hand casually, though the warmth of her touch lingered on Issei's skin. We've established a detection matrix, Rosweiss announced, either not N. Oettinger diplomatically ignoring the moment she'd interrupted. It's already functioning, though the range is limited to approximately 20 kilometers. Any signals yet? Issei asked, grateful for the return to mission focus. Nothing definitive, Zenovia replied. But we've identified 3 potential locations with energy signatures that might be consistent with Excalibur fragments. She spread a map across the kitchen table, indicating marked positions. One was near Kuo Academy itself, another in a forested area outside town, and the third at what appeared to be a private estate in the city's wealthiest district. The signatures are faint, Rosweiss cautioned, and partially masked by other energies. We can't be certain until we investigate more closely. Issei studied the map, considering strategic implications. We should prioritize the location near the academy. If Kokabeel is planning something there, it could endanger hundreds of students. Agreed, Zenovia said, but not tonight. We need rest and preparation, especially after the warehouse operation. I should report to my superiors as well, Rosweiss added. Odin will want to know about the recovered Fra. G-Ment and the distributed network we discovered. They established a watch rotation for the night, with Zenovia taking first shift to monitor the detection matrix while the others rested. Issei was assigned a small guest room on the second floor, sparse but comfortable with a single bed and basic amenities. Once alone, he retrieved his comm unit to contact Master Qatar. The Jedi Master's holographic form appeared promptly, expression neutral but attentive. Knight Hyodo, your report. Issei provided a concise summary of recent events, including the warehouse operation and recovery of Excalibur rapidly. He detailed the distributed energy network they'd discovered, emphasizing the technological sophistication that suggested Malikor's involvement. This confirms our concerns, Qatar said when he'd finished. Darth Malikor is implementing contingencies, adapting quickly to setbacks. The Council believes his ultimate goal remains unchanged, establishing a stable portal to Korriban or another Sith stronghold. The local supernatural factions are increasing cooperation, Issei noted. Angels, devils, and now Norse representatives are coordinating efforts against the common threat. Qatar stroked his beard thoughtfully. Unusual alliances, but perhaps necessary given the circumstances. However, his expression grew more serious. Remember your primary identity as a Jedi, Issei. These supernatural entities have their own agendas, their own conceptions of balance that may not align with the Force. I understand, Master. Do you? Qatar studied him through the hologram. Your energy signature has shown continued evolution since your interaction with angelic power. The Council senses attachments forming. Issei maintained his composure through practiced discipline, though inwardly he felt a flicker of concern. The Council's ability to sense his emotional state across such vast distances spoke to the significance of the changes occurring within him. My focus remains on the mission, he assured his master. Any connections formed are in service to that purpose. Qatar didn't appear entirely convinced but nodded acceptance. Be mindful of the code, Knight Hyodo. The dark side often begins not with malice, but with good intentions pursued through emotional attachment rather than serene wisdom. Yes, Master. After the communication ended, Issei sat in meditation posture on the floor, seeking center in the Force. The warning had been clear, if gently delivered. his growing connection to Irina and others had not gone unnoticed by the Jedi Council. Yet as he reached deeper into the Force, he found no darkness there, no corruption or imbalance resulting from these connections. Rather, he sensed something like approval, as if the Force itself affirmed the path he was walking. Unconventional though it might be by traditional Jedi standards. His lightsaber lay before him, the crystal within still bearing traces of gold from its interaction with Irina's angelic energy. On impulse, he disassembled it through the Force, allowing the components to float in the air as he examined the crystal directly. The azure kyber pulsed with internal light, but now with distinct golden veins running through its structure, not corruption, but evolution. The crystal had adapted to the new energies it had channeled, becoming something neither purely Jedi nor purely angelic, but a harmonious synthesis of both. As he reassembled the lightsaber, Issei found himself contemplating Irina's words from earlier. Even ancient wisdom evolves when confronted with new truths. Perhaps the Jedi Code, with its rigid prohibitions against attachment, represented wisdom for a different context than the one he now faced. Perhaps here, on Earth, where supernatural energies operated according to different principles than those the Jedi had traditionally encountered, different approaches might be necessary. The thought bordered on heresy by Jedi standards, yet felt undeniably right within the Force. Sleep came eventually, bringing dreams of azure and gold light intertwining in perfect harmony. Morning brought renewed purpose and clarity. Issei joined the others for a simple breakfast, during which they finalized plans to investigate the energy signature near Kuo Academy. As Zenobia was explaining the approach, however, all their phones chimed simultaneously with emergency alerts. Devil Territory breach notification, Zenobia explained, checking her device. The Cetri heiress has implemented an alert system for supernatural threats within Kuo boundaries. Issei's phone displayed a map indicating disturbance at Kuo Academy itself, precisely where they'd detected the faint Excalibur signature. It's happening now, he realized, rising immediately. Kokabeel is making his move. The students, Irina said with alarm. Classes started 30 minutes ago. Rossweiss was already gathering her equipment. My car is fastest. We leave immediately. They piled into the Valkyrie's sedan, which proved capable of speeds far beyond what its ordinary appearance suggested. Rossweiss navigated through morning traffic with precision that spoke of extensive tactical driving training, reaching Kuo Academy in under 10 minutes. What they found stopped them all cold. A massive barrier surrounded the entire school grounds, shimmering with dark purple energy that twisted ordinary light into grotesque patterns. Within its confines, figures moved in combat, devils in Cetri and Grimoire colors facing off against fallen angels and what appeared to be stray exorcists. And hovering above it all, 6 pairs of black wings extended imperiously, was Kokabeel himself. He's created a battlefield, Zenobia observed grimly, drawing Excalibur destruction. The barrier prevents escape and keeps ordinary humans from witnessing supernatural combat. The students and faculty, Irina asked anxiously. Issei extended his senses through the Force, scanning the enclosed area. Most are unconscious, some kind of stasis effect. They're alive but completely vulnerable. Hostages, Rossweiss concluded, ensuring the devils engage rather than retreat. They approached the barrier cautiously, assessing its properties. Rossweiss reached out with her magic, testing its resistance. Powerful, but penetrable with the right countermeasures, she determined. Give me a moment to analyze its structure. While the Valkyrie worked, Issei observed the battle within. Sona Cetri and her peerage had established a defensive perimeter around the main school building, protecting the unconscious students with water-based magic that formed protective barriers. Meanwhile, crimson energy flashed across the athletic fields as Rias Grimoire's group engaged fallen angels directly. There, Irina pointed suddenly, on the roof of the old school building. Issei followed her gesture and saw a figure dressed in exorcist garb, Fried Selzen, unmistakable even at this distance. Beside him rested a cylindrical container identical to the one they'd encountered in the warehouse, with what appeared to be an Excalibur fragment atop it. Excalibur transparency, Zenobia identified. Known for rendering its wielder invisible. He's using the same energy containment system we disrupted yesterday. But why here? Irina wondered. What's special about the academy? Issei's eyes widened as understanding dawned. It's built on a ley line convergence point. Sona mentioned it during our meeting. The school was constructed at this location specifically because the natural energy flow helps maintain the Devil's territorial claim. Perfect for the distributed network, Rossweiss confirmed. I've identified the barrier's weakness. We can penetrate it here. She indicated a point near the tennis courts, but only briefly before it reseals. Then we don't waste time, Zenobia declared. Primary objective: secure Excalibur transparency. Secondary objective: support the Devil factions against Kokobile if necessary. I'll handle Fried, Issei volunteered. I've faced him before and understand his fighting style. I'll accompany you, Irina insisted. You're still recovering from yesterday's injury. Zenobia nodded agreement. Rossweiss and I will engage the fallen angels to create a diversion, drawing attention away from your approach to the fragment. With roles assigned, they positioned themselves at the barrier's weak point. Rossweiss began an incantation, Nordic runes glowing around her hands as she forced her will against the supernatural boundary. For a moment nothing happened. Then a section of the barrier wavered and parted like a curtain. Now, she commanded. It won't hold long. They dashed through the opening. It sealed behind them with an audible snap. Immediately, the sounds and sensations of battle enveloped them, the crack of energy weapons, shouts of combatants, and the distinctive metallic taste of supernatural power saturating the air. Zenobia and Rossweiss sprinted toward the nearest group of fallen angels, Holy Sword and Norse magic announcing their presence with spectacular effect. The diver, Scion worked perfectly. All eyes turned toward the new threats, giving Issei and Irina precious moments to slip toward the old-school building unnoticed. They reached it from the blind side, using a maintenance door to enter. Inside, the hallways were eerily silent, occasionally interrupted by tremors as battles raged outside. Up these stairs, Issei directed, sensing the Excalibur fragments in RGY's signature more clearly now that they were inside the barrier. Fried is still on the roof with the containment unit. They ascended swiftly, Issei with lightsaber in hand but not yet activated, Irina with her cross weapon ready to transform at a moment's notice. As they approached the roof access door, Issei paused, extending his senses. Two presences, he murmured. Fried, and his expression darkened. Malachor. Irina's eyes widened. Both of them. That complicates matters. It does, Issei agreed grimly. But it also confirms our suspicion that they're working together despite Kokobile's earlier betrayal. A temporary alliance of convenience, Irina surmised. Neither trusting the other, both planning eventual betrayal. Typical Sith methodology, Issei confirmed. We proceed carefully. Malachor is the greater threat, but Fried is more unpredictable. They positioned themselves on either side of the door, communicating silently through gestures. On Issei's count of 3, he pushed the door open with the force while Irina rolled through the opening, transforming her cross into its weapon form in one fluid motion. Issei followed immediately after, lightsaber igniting with its distinctive snap hiss as he assumed a defensive position beside her. The rooftop held exactly what they'd expected. The cylindrical containment unit with Excalibur transparency mounted atop it. Surrounded by glowing sigils, Fried stood nearby, twirling his light swords with casual menace, while Darth Malachor observed from several meters away, his black robes stirring in the wind. Right on schedule, Malachor commented, seemingly unsurprised by their arrival. Your predictability is almost disappointing, Jedi. We aim to please, Issei replied evenly, assessing the tactical situation. The containment unit was positioned at the roof's center, sigils pulsing in sequence as they channeled the Excalibur fragment's energy into whatever network Kokobile and Malachor had established. Ooh, it's Angel Girl and Laser Sword Boy again. Fried cackled, his manic energy unchanged despite their previous encounter. Come back for another dance. I'll try not to cut too deep this time. Lord Kokobile wants you alive for questioning. The fragment doesn't belong to you, Irina stated firmly, her weapon glowing with holy light. Stand aside or face heaven's judgment. Fried laughed hysterically. Heaven's judgment. Look around you, angel cakes. Your precious heaven isn't exactly rushing to intervene, is it? Meanwhile, Lord Kokobile is about to rewrite the rules for all factions. By starting another great war, Issei challenged, slowly shifting position to gain better angle on the containment unit. Thousands will die for his ambition. Thousands, millions, who cares? Fried twirled his swords impatiently. The strong survive, the weak perish. That's the natural order, right, Lord Malachor? The Sith Lord's expression remained impassive. Survival is certainly a primary imperative. He agreed smoothly. Though perhaps not in the crude manner you imagine, Selzyn. Something in his tone made Issei tense. Malachor was playing his own game, using Kokobeel's forces while pursuing separate objectives. The alliance between them was clearly fraught with hidden agendas. The containment unit, Issei murmured to Irina. It's linked to other locations, probably where the third fragment is being held. Quote, can we disrupt it like Rosweiss did at the warehouse? She whispered back, not without understanding the full network. We need to secure the fragment first. Fried had grown bored with waiting. Enough chit-chat, he declared, brandishing his weapons. Let's spill some blood. He charged toward them with reckless abandon, light swords slashing in unpredictable patterns. Issei met the attack with practiced precision, lightsaber intercepting both blades in a shower of sparks while Irina circled to flank the exorcist. Ooh, teamwork, Fried mocked, disengaging to avoid Irina's strike. How adorable. While they engaged Fried, Malachor remained in position, observing with analytical detachment. His restraint concerned Issei more than overt AGG. Reshan would have. The Sith was clearly waiting for something specific. The battle with Fried escalated quickly. The stray exorcist fought with frenzied intensity, switching between his light swords and pistol unpredictably. Issei and Irina worked in seamless coordination, their combat styles complementing each other naturally, his disciplined lightsaber technique creating openings for her more fluid, acrobatic attacks. You've improved since the warehouse, Fried noted, breathing heavily after barely avoiding a synchronized attack that would have incapacitated him. Been practicing together, have we? How sweet. His taunts masked genuine concern. Despite his bravado, Fried was gradually being maneuvered away from the containment unit, exactly as Issei and Irina had planned. When they had created sufficient separation, Irina suddenly broke pattern, flipping over Fried's head while Issei pressed forward with increased aggression. The momentary confusion allowed Irina to dash toward the Excalibur fragment. Oh no you don't, Fried snarled, attempting to disengage from Issei to pursue her. Issei anticipated the move, using force push to slam the exorcist against a ventilation unit. With enough impact to momentarily stun him. In that brief window, he turned his attention to Malachor, who had finally moved toward the containment unit. Stop, Issei commanded, lightsaber raised. Malachor smiled thinly. Or what, young Jedi, you'll strike me down in anger? That would be interesting. The Sith's calm confidence triggered warning bells in Issei's mind. Something was wrong about this entire scenario. Malachor was too passive, too willing to let events unfold without direct intervention. Irina had reached the containment unit and extended her hand toward Excalibur transparency. The moment her fingers touched the holy sword, however, the sigils surrounding the unit flared blindingly bright. Irina, wait, Issei called, sudden understanding dawning too late. The trap activated instantly. The sigils reconfigured, forming a containment field not just around the Excalibur fragment but around Irina as well. Golden chains of energy materialized, binding her in place as her own angelic power was turned against her. Perfect, Malachor commented with satisfaction. Angelic energy was the missing component. Fried had recovered, laughing as he rejoined the Sith. Told you it would work. Angels can't resist holy artifacts, like moths to flame. Issei's mind raced through options, none of them good. Irina was trapped within the containment field, her struggle to be reek-free only strengthening the bonds as they absorbed and redirected her own power. What have you done? He demanded, advancing toward Malachor with lightsaber raised. Simply completed the network, the Sith replied calmly. Your angel friend has provided the final catalyst needed to stabilize our distributed convergence system. Even now, the other fragments are responding to her energy signature. On cue, the sigils began pulsing in a new pattern, and the Excalibur fragment glowed with intensified light. Irina gasped in pain as energy flowed from her into the containment system. The containment fields aren't just restricting the fragment's power, Issei realized aloud. They're amplifying it, channeling it through a network connected to specific locations. Precisely, Malachor confirmed. Kokabeel believes we're creating a distributed portal network to invade heaven. A charming notion, but ultimately small-minded. Freed's manic grin faltered slightly. Huh, but Lord Kokabeel said. Lord Kokabeel says many things, Malachor interrupted dismissively. His obsession with factional warfare is useful but limited. My goals transcend such petty conflicts. The Sith turned to Issei. Yellow eyes gleaming with dark satisfaction. You understand, don't you, Jedi? The true potential of connecting Force Nexus points with supernatural convergence locations. Issei did understand, and the realization chilled him. You're not creating portals to heaven or Korriban. You're attempting to alter the fundamental force properties of this entire region, maybe the planet itself. Alteration implies change within existing parameters, Malachor corrected. I prefer to think of it as transcendence, elevating this world's limited energy systems to their full potential by aligning them with the true power of the dark side. Freed looked between them, confusion evident on his face. Wait, what? That wasn't the plan. Your usefulness has ended, Selzen, Malachor stated coldly. Without looking away from Issei, he extended one hand toward the exorcist. Freed's eyes widened in shock as invisible force lifted him from the ground, clutching at his throat as Malachor's force choke tightened. Consider this a lesson in Sith philosophy, Malachor told Issei conversationally, as Freed's struggles weakened. Alliances are temporary, power is eternal. With a casual flick of his wrist, Malachor sent Freed's body hurtling over the roof's edge, where it disappeared from sight. Now then, the Sith continued, igniting his crimson lightsaber, shall we discuss your options, Knight Hyodo? They're rather limited, I'm afraid. Issei glanced toward Irina, who continued struggling against the energy bonds. Her violet eyes met his, communicating determination despite her pain. I'm not interested in discussions, Issei replied, settling into the opening stance of Form V. Release her, now, or you'll what? Malachor's tone held genuine curiosity. Attack me in anger. That path leads to the dark side, as your masters surely taught you. Yet what alternative do you have? The containment field will continue drawing energy from your angel until the network is fully activated. Minutes at most. He was right, and Issei knew it. Conventional Jedi wisdom offered no solution to this dilemma. To save Irina, he needed to disable the containment system immediately, but doing so required engaging Malachor directly, with emotions Jedi were trained to suppress. In that moment of crisis, Issei made his choice. He reached deep within himself, not suppressing his concern for Irina but acknowledging it. Accepting it as part of who he was. Then, rather than allowing that emotion to control him, he channeled it, not into anger or fear, but into focused determination. The Force responded in ways he hadn't anticipated. It flowed through him with renewed clarity and purpose, as if approving his integration of emotion rather than its rejection. His lightsaber hummed with heightened energy, the gold veins within its crystal glowing visibly through the hilt. There is another way, Issei said, his voice steady. One neither Jedi nor Sith, but perhaps what both were meant to be. He moved with speed that surprised even Malachor, covering the distance between them in a heartbeat. Their lightsabers clashed with explosive force, red and blue gold energy creating a scintillating nexus where the blades met. Malachor recovered quickly from his surprise, countering with the elegant precision of Form 2. His technique was flawless, centuries of Sith knowledge refined into lethal efficiency. Yet Issei matched him blow for blow, his Form V augmented by a connection to the Force deeper than he'd ever experienced. They exchanged a furious sequence of strikes, each sting the other's defenses while seeking advantage. Malachor fought with calculated control, his style economical and precise. Issei responded with the power-focused counters of Gem So, turning its attacks against him while maintaining aggressive pressure. Fascinating, Malachor commented during a momentary impasse. Your connection to the Force has evolved. You're channeling emotion, yet without succumbing to the dark side. Most unorthodox. The Jedi don't have a monopoly on light, Issei replied, pressing forward with renewed determination. Nor do the Sith fully understand darkness. Their duel intensified, lightsabers moving faster than ordinary eyes could track. Malachor gradually gave ground, forced toward the edge of the roof by Issei's relentless advance. Yet the Sith showed no concern, indeed. He seemed almost pleased by the development. You think you're winning, Malachor observed during another brief exchange. How charmingly naive. The taunt held purpose. Distraction from the true battle occurring behind them. The containment field around Irina had begun pulsing more rapidly, the sigils reconfiguring into new patterns as the distributed network approached activation. Issei sensed the danger through the force just as Irina cried out in pain. The Excalibur fragment was drawing more heavily on her angelic energy, accelerating the process Malachor had initiated. He had seconds, not minutes, to act. Fainting left, Issei suddenly disengaged from Malachor and leapt backward, landing beside the containment unit. Before the Sith could respond, Issei plunged his lightsaber directly into the unit's control mechanism. The effect was immediate and violent. The sigil pattern destabilized, energy surging in chaotic bursts as the containment field fluctuated wildly. The Excalibur fragment rose from its mount, hovering eerily as its holy power, no longer properly channeled, radiated in waves. Fool, Malachor snarled, genuine anger breaking through his composed facade. You have no idea what you've done. Disrupted your network, Issei replied, using the force to pull Irina free as the containment field collapsed around her. That's enough for now. Catching her as she stumbled forward, he positioned himself protectively between her and Malachor. The Sith's yellow eyes blazed with fury and something else, calculation, reassessment. A temporary setback, Malachor declared, backing toward the roof's edge. But perhaps educational. You continue to surprise me, Knight Hyodo. Your potential exceeds Jedi limitations in ways I find promising. With those cryptic words, Malachor performed a perfect backflip off the roof, landing on what appeared to be a waiting transport below, a modified vehicle with technology far beyond Earth's current capabilities. It rose silently into the air, then accelerated away at impossible speed. The Excalibur fragment remained hovering above the damaged containment unit, its energy unstable and dangerous. Irina, though weakened, stepped forward with her hand extended. I can stabilize it, she assured Issei. It responds to angelic authority. True to her word, the fragment gradually settled. As she murmured prayers in ancient Enochian, its chaotic energy patterns resolving into more controlled rhythms. When it finally descended into her waiting hands, she wrapped it carefully in blessed cloth similar to what Zenobia had used for rapidly. 2 fragments recovered, she noted with satisfaction, though her voice betrayed exhaustion. 1 to go. Issei supported her as they made their way back toward the roof access door. Are you all right? The containment field was drawing heavily on your energy. I'll recover, she assured him with a tired smile. Angels are resilient. But Issei, she paused, looking up at him with an expression both serious and wondering. What you did just now, the way you fought Malachor, that wasn't standard Jedi technique, was it? He considered his response carefully. No, it wasn't what the Jedi Council would recommend. But it worked, she pointed out. You didn't fall to darkness even while acknowledging emotion. The Force is more complex than either Jedi or Sith philosophy fully encompasses, Issei admitted. Perhaps especially here on Earth, where it interacts with supernatural energies in unique ways. They reached the door just as it burst open, revealing Zenobia and Rosweiss, both showing signs of hard fighting but unbowed. You're alive, Zenobia stated with characteristic bluntness, though relief colored her tone. Her eyes widened upon seeing the wrapped fragment in Irina's hands. You recovered transparency, at significant cost, Rosweiss observed, her analytical gaze noting Irina's weakened condition and the destroyed containment unit behind them. The network, disrupted, not destroyed, Issei explained as they descended the stairs. Malachor escaped, but we confirmed our suspicions, he's using Kokobil's war ambitions to mask his true objective. Which is, Zenobia pressed, fundamental alteration of this region's force properties through alignment with dark side energy, Issei explained grimly. If he succeeds, it would corrupt not just the Force but all supernatural energy systems connected to it. Rosweiss's expression darkened, including divine power structures in all pantheons. Clever, and catastrophic if achieved. They emerged from the building to find the battlefield situation dramatically changed. The barrier surrounding the school remained in place, but Kokobil no longer hovered triumphantly above. Instead, the fallen angel leader was engaged in furious combat with a newcomer, a young man with white hair and glowing armor who radiated power beyond anything Issei had previously sensed on Earth. The White Dragon Emperor, Rosweiss identified. Interesting. Asgard's intelligence suggested he wouldn't intervene in factional conflicts. This transcends factions, Issei noted. If Malachor succeeds, all supernatural entities would be affected. They regrouped with Sona Citri's forces, who had maintained their defensive perimeter around the unconscious students. The Citri heiress herself looked exhausted but composed as she directed her peerage's efforts. You recovered the fragment, she noted with approval upon seeing their approach. Excellent timing. Kokabeel is being contained. Above them, the battle between Kokabeel and the White Dragon Emperor had become increasingly one-sided. Despite the fallen angel's power and experience, he was clearly outmatched by the newcomer's overwhelming strength. The barrier, Issei inquired, noting it remained intact despite Kokabeel's imminent defeat. Self-sustaining until manually deactivated, Sona explained. We're working on dismantling it safely without harming the students. Rosweiss stepped forward. I can assist with that. Norse magic has specific countermeasures for containment fields of this type. While the Valkyrie joined Sona's efforts to dismantle the barrier, Issei, Irina, and Zenobia withdrew slightly, securing both recovered Excalibur fragments. We're making progress, Irina noted optimistically. 2 fragments secured, Kokabeel about to be defeated. We just need to locate Nightmare and prevent Malachor from establishing another network. His resources aren't unlimited, Issei agreed. Each failure depletes whatever support structure is established here on Earth. Zenobia remained focused on practical concerns. We should return to the safe house immediately. Both fragments need proper containment, and the detection matrix must be recalibrated to locate Nightmare. As they prepared to depart, Issei felt a familiar presence approaching, Tsubaki Shinra, the Citri vice president. Looking remarkably composed despite the battle's intensity. Hyodo, she greeted formally. A moment of your time. He nodded to Irina and Zenobia. Go ahead, I'll join you shortly. Once they'd moved out of earshot, Tsubaki adjusted her glasses precisely. Your fighting style is unlike anything in our records, she stated without preamble. Neither angelic nor demonic, yet extraordinarily effective. The observation goes both ways, Issei replied. Your defensive techniques during the battle were impressive. A hint of appreciation flickered across her normally stoic features. The Citri specialization in water magic offers unique tactical advantages in area control. I noticed. The compliment was genuine. Issei had observed her strategic deployment of water barriers that had saved numerous students from collateral damage. Tsubaki studied him with analytical intensity. You're a contradiction, Hyodo. You attend our academy, live in our territory, yet serve neither heaven nor hell. Your power is neither sacred gear nor conventional magic. Does that concern you? It interests me, she corrected. Particularly your effectiveness working with different factions. Angels, Valkyrie, even devils. You coordinate with all without apparent prejudice. The threat Malachor represents transcends factional boundaries, Issei explained. Cooperation is logical, not ideological. Perhaps. Tsubaki's expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Yet few beings could bridge such diverse interests effectively. President Citri believes your unique perspective may prove valuable in future situations. Is that an invitation to further cooperation? Issei asked. Consider it an acknowledgement of mutual interests, Tsubaki replied diplomatically. And perhaps a professional appreciation for your combat methodology. The statement, delivered with such formal precision, nevertheless represented significant acknowledgement from the normally reserved devil. Issei recognized it as the beginning of respect between warriors who had observed each other in battle. The sentiment is mutual, he assured her. Your strategic approach to today's conflict saved many lives. Something shifted in Tsubaki's demeanor, a subtle relaxation of her formal guard. The evacuation protocols were my design, she admitted. President Citri implemented Hem perfectly despite challenging circumstances. Effective leaders recognize valuable counsel, Issei observed. A truth that transcends species and factions. A ghost of a smile touched Tsubaki's lips. Indeed, she extended her hand in formal gesture. Until our next encounter, Jedi Knight. Issei accepted the handshake, noting the firm grip and controlled strength behind it, not unlike Rosweiss's. though with distinctly different energy signature. Until then, Vice President. As Tsubaki returned to her duties, Issei rejoined Irina and Zenobia. Above them, the battle had concluded. Ith Kokobeel's defeat. The fallen angel now unconscious and restrained within glowing white energy bonds generated by the White Dragon Emperor. An eventful day, Irina commented as they departed the academy grounds. 2 fragments recovered, Kokobeel captured, and we've confirmed Malakor's true objective. Yet 1 fragment remains missing, Zenobia reminded them. And Malakor escaped to plan his next move. True, Issei acknowledged, but we've disrupted his timetable significantly. Each setback forces him to adapt, reallocate resources, rebuild his network. Time works in our favor now. As they walked through streets gradually returning to normal activity, Issei found himself contemplating the battle on the rooftop, specifically, his approach to confronting Malakor. He had drawn on emotion rather than suppressing it, channeling his concern for Irina into focused determination rather than allowing it to become fear or anger. The result had been unprecedented, a connection to the Force deeper and more harmonious than anything his traditional Jedi training had prepared him for. Rather than leading him toward darkness, acknowledging his emotional connection to Irina had somehow strengthened his alignment with light. It contradicted fundamental Jedi teaching about attachment and emotion. Yet the Force itself had responded positively, empowering rather than corrupting his abilities. Glancing at Irina walking beside him, her determination evident despite her exhaustion, Issei wondered if perhaps the unique convergence of Force energy and supernatural power on Earth Riku. I read new approaches, new understanding of connections that traditional Jedi wisdom hadn't anticipated. The path ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time since encountering Malakor, Issei felt genuine hope. Not just for their mission's success, but for possibilities beyond it, possibilities that included connections he'd once believed forbidden to a Jedi Knight. Sacred bonds, perhaps, that the Force itself approved. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Shadows of the Sith. The church safehouse hummed with activity as morning sunlight streamed through reinforced windows. 3 days had passed since the confrontation at Kuo Academy, and the Coalition's temporary headquarters had transformed from a simple safehouse into a sophisticated command center. In the living room, digital maps and GY tracking systems had replaced ordinary furniture. The dining table now supported an array of supernatural detection equipment, combining church technology with Norse magical instruments Rossweiss had contributed. The basement vault had been reinforced to safely contain the 2 recovered Excalibur fragments, rapidly and transparency, while preventing Kokobeel or Malakor from detecting their energy signatures. Issei stood before the primary tracking display, studying the pulsing patterns that represented known convergence points across Kuo and surrounding regions. Each appeared as a glowing nexus where ley lines intersected with what he recognized as Force-sensitive locations, places where the cosmic energy field naturally concentrated, though most humans remained oblivious to their significance. The pattern has shifted again, he noted, tracing a finger along a newly formed connection between points. Malakor is adapting his network designed to compensate for the missing fragments. Rossweiss approached, her silver hair pulled back in a practical ponytail as she studied the display with analytical precision. Impressive flexibility. Each time we disrupt his system, he reconfigures rather than rebuilding from scratch. That suggests deeper understanding of dimensional mathematics than I initially credited him with. Sith knowledge is extensive, Issei explained. Their holocrons contain millennia of accumulated research, much of it focused on manipulating reality through Force techniques. Similar to certain branches of Norse Sair, Rossweiss observed. Though our Force appears more universally applicable than our Pantheon-specific methodologies. Their technical discussion was interrupted as Irina entered from the kitchen, carrying a tray with tea and light refreshments. Unlike her usual cheerful demeanor, she moved with careful precision, still recovering from the energy drain she'd suffered during the academy battle. You two have been staring at that map for hours, she chided gently. Setting the tray on a nearby table, even supernatural warriors need sustenance. Issei accepted the offered tea with a grateful nod. Despite his Jedi training in physical endurance, the past days had taken their toll, not just physically, but mentally as he grappled with the implications of his evolving connection to the Force. Any word from Zenobia? He asked. noting the blue-haired exorcist's absence. Still meeting with church representatives, Irina confirmed. The recovery of 2 fragments has earned us additional support, though the higher-ups remain concerned about our unorthodox coalition. Understandable, Rossweiss commented, selecting a rice ball from the tray. Norse Christian cooperation has historical precedents, but adding a Jedi Knight and Devil allies represents significant departure from established protocols. Results matter more than protocols, Issei noted, returning his attention to the display. And so far, our approach has proven effective. The safe house door opened, admitting Zenobia, whose expression suggested mixed outcomes from her meeting. She carried a sealed document case bearing the church's official emblem, a sign of formal communication from highest authorities. The conclave has officially sanctioned our coalition, she announced without preamble. Temporary authorization to continue cooperatio with non-Christian entities in pursuit of the final Excalibur fragment and neutralization of the fallen angel threat. That's wonderful news, Irina exclaimed, her natural optimism briefly overcoming her fatigue. Zenovia's expression remained guarded, with conditions. Once Nightmare is recovered and Kokobil's forces neutralized, we're expected to withdraw from any further involvement with Malachor or force-related matters. The qualification hung heavily in the air. All present understood its implications. The Church viewed the Excalibur fragments as their priority, with Malachor's large Earth threat considered secondary or possibly outside their jurisdiction entirely. Short-sighted, Rossweiss observed bluntly. If Malachor succeeds in corrupting the region's fundamental energy patterns, all supernatural factions will be affected, heaven included. Politicians rarely think beyond immediate concerns, Issei noted, having observed similar limitations among planetary governments during his Jedi training. For now, our goals align. We'll address future challenges when they arrive. Zenobia placed the document case on the table, extracting several folders containing intelligence reports. The Church has provided additional information on potential locations for Excalibur Nightmare. 3 sites show energy signatures consistent with the fragment's known properties. Shi Spria, D satellite images across the table, an abandoned shrine in mountains north of Kuo, a private estate owned by a reclusive collector of occult artifacts, and what appeared to be an ordinary office building in the city's financial district. The shrine is most probable, Zenobia continued. It shows traces of fallen angel activity within the past week, and its remote location provides strategic advantages for defensive positioning. Issei studied the images thoughtfully. Perhaps too obvious. Malachor knows we've disrupted 2 nodes in his network. He'll anticipate our targeting the 3rd. So it's a trap, Irina concluded. Almost certainly, Issei agreed. But that doesn't mean we should avoid it. Sometimes the most effective approach is to spring the trap intentionally, under controlled conditions. Rossweiss raised an eyebrow. Bold strategy, though not without merit if properly executed. Their tactical discussion was interrupted by a subtle shift in the safehouse's protective wards, not a breach, but a disturbance indicating someone or something testing their perimeter. Issei sensed it through the force simultaneously with Zenovia's alert from their security system. Someone's approaching, she announced, drawing Excalibur destruction from its dimensional storage. Not triggering hostile response from the wards, but definitely supernatural. Issei moved to the front window, extending his senses beyond ordinary perception. What he found surprised him. A Yukai energy signature, but unlike any he'd previously encountered in Kuo. Powerful, controlled, yet distinctly feline in its fundamental pattern. Nekosho, he identified, a rare subset of Nekomata Yukai. Female, powerful, and, waiting for us to notice her. Hostile, Zenobia demanded, prepared for immediate engagement. Issei shook his head. No. Cautious, curious, she knows we've detected her and is deliberately remaining just outside the ward perimeter. An invitation to parley, Rossweiss surmised. Interesting. Nekosho rarely involve themselves in factional conflicts. Irina joined Issei at the window, though her human eyes couldn't perceive what his force senses detected. Should we meet with her? Yes, he decided after brief consideration. But carefully. Nekosho are known for specialized information gathering. If she's approached our safehouse directly, she likely has knowledge worth trading. They established a meeting protocol. Issei and Rossweiss would make initial contact while Irina and Zenobia maintained defensive positions within the safehouse, ready to provide support if needed. The arrangement balanced diplomatic openness with tactical caution. Stepping outside, Issei walked precisely to the ward boundary, Rossweiss a measured pace behind him. He stopped, head at the invisible line where church protective magic hummed with subtle power. "You can come out now," he called to the apparently empty street. "We mean no harm unless threatened." A chuckle emanated from shadows between houses across the street, melodic yet holding an edge of danger. "So formal, Nya. And here I thought we could have a friendly chat without all the posturing." The speaker materialized from darkness with liquid grace, a young woman with voluptuous proportions accentuated by a black kimono worn provocatively loose at the shoulders. Her most distinctive features, however, were the black cat ears perched atop her head and two matching tails that swayed with hypnotic rhythm behind her. "Kuroka," Rossweiss identified, her tone suggesting recognition beyond mere species identification. SS Class Stray Devil. Wanted by several factions for unauthorized experimentation with senjutsu. The Nekosho grinned, revealing delicate fangs. "My reputation precedes me, though stray devil is such an ugly term. I prefer independently operating supernatural contractor, Nya. Her golden eyes shifted to Issei, pupils contracting to feline slits as she studied him with unconcealed interest. "And you must be the mysterious Jedi Knight everyone's whispering about. Not devil, not angel, not yokai, something entirely new to our little supernatural ecosystem." "Why are you here, Kuroka?" Issei asked directly, noting how she deliberately projected a playful, carefree persona that masked razor intelligence and dangerous power. She approached the ward boundary with exaggerated caution, trailing one finger along its invisible edge. "Information exchange, of course. I know things you need to know, and I suspect you know things I'd find valuable." "What could an SS Class Stray possibly want from us?" Rossweiss challenged skeptically. Kuroka's playful demeanor momentarily vanished, revealing something harder and more pragmatic. "Protection. Your Sith problem is becoming everyone's problem. The underground supernatural community is buzzing with rumors of dark energy corrupting ley lines, familiar spirits going mad, magical constructs failing catastrophically." Quote, effects of Malikor's distributed network, Issei realized. Even partially implemented, it's beginning to influence supernatural energy patterns. "Bingo," Kuroka confirmed, her tail swishing with agitation. "And some of us who are particularly sensitive to natural energy flows are feeling it more acutely than others. It's like spiritual acid reflux, Nya. Deeply unpleasant." Despite her flippant description, Issei sensed genuine concern beneath her casual facade. As a Nekosho specializing in senjutsu, life energy manipulation, she would indeed be more vulnerable to disturbances in natural energy patterns. "What information are you offering?" he asked, maintaining caution despite growing belief in her sincerity. Kuroka's expression turned serious. "The location of something your Sith friend values greatly. A temple, ancient, hidden, connected to both Earth's supernatural network and whatever cosmic mumbo-jumbo he manipulates. I've observed him visiting it 3 times in the past week. Always with elaborate precautions to prevent tracking. Yet you tracked him anyway," Rossweiss noted with reluctant admiration. A smirk played across Kuroka's features. "Stealth is a cat's specialty, Nya. And I've had centuries to perfect techniques for following those who don't wish to be followed." Issei considered her offer carefully, reaching out through the Force to assess her intentions. While her surface thoughts remained shielded by impressive mental barriers, her underlying emotional state suggested genuine concern rather than deception. "If we provide protection, what exactly do you expect?" he asked. "Safe passage to neutral territory once this mess is resolved," Kuroka replied promptly. "Devil Society has misunderstood my previous actions. I need assurances I won't be executed for helping save their collective supernatural behinds." Rossweiss and Issei exchanged glances, conducting silent assessment through subtle cues developed during their days working together. "Limited terms," Issei finally stated. "We'll guarantee your safety while cooperating with our coalition. Afterward, we'll speak on your behalf to relevant authorities regarding your assistance. But final decisions remain with established supernatural governance." Kuroka's ears flicked thoughtfully as she considered the counter-offer. "Fair enough. I suppose reputation rehabilitation is a multi-step process, Nya. She extended her hand across the ward boundary. Do we have a deal, Jedi-kun? Issei accepted the handshake, noting the subtle pulse of Yukai energy that accompanied it, not an attack, but a traditional supernatural acknowledgement of binding agreement. Deal, he confirmed. Now tell us about this temple. 2 hours later, the expanded coalition gathered around the dining table, reviewing information Kuroka had provided about Malikor's hidden temple. Xenovia had initially objected to allowing a known stray devil into their safe house, but pragmatism ultimately overrode ideological concerns. The structure predates recorded Japanese history, Kuroka explained, indicating markings on ancient stone walls visible in photographs she'd taken from concealment. But these aren't Japanese symbols, or any Earth language I recognize. Issei studied the images with growing concern. They're Sith hieroglyphs, ancient script used in their earliest temples and artifacts. On Earth, Irina questioned, leaning closer to examine the markings. How is that possible? The Sith Empire at its height spanned thousands of worlds, Issei explained. Their explorers traveled extensively, establishing outposts on promising planets. This temple may have been constructed during early reconnaissance of Earth, then abandoned when they found its force properties unusual. Unusual how? Rossweiss inquired, her academic interest piqued. Issei chose his words carefully, aware he was revealing information about the force that Jedi typically kept internal to their order. Earth exists at an intersection point between dimensional planes. Its force signature is muted compared to most inhabited worlds, but interwoven with supernatural energies unique to this planet. Early Sith explorers would have found it difficult to manipulate the force here using standard techniques. But Malikor has overcome that limitation, Xenovia observed grimly. Yes, Issei confirmed. By integrating Sith methodology with understanding of Earth's supernatural energy systems, knowledge he's gained through alliance with Kokabeel and study of the Excalibur fragments. Kuroka stretched languidly before rejoining the conversation. Whatever he's doing in that temple involves significant power manipulation. The surrounding forest is dying, trees withering, animals fleeing, even insects vanishing from the area. Classic dark side corruption, Issei noted. Life energy being drained to fuel unnatural processes. Rossweiss had been overlaying Kuroka's temple locat ion with their existing maps of convergence points and ley lines. It sits directly atop a major intersection of 3 ley lines, she announced, and corresponds with what appears to be a natural force nexus point. Based on the patterns we've identified, perfect location for continued experimentation, Issei concluded. Even without the Excalibur fragments, he can draw on significant ambient energy to refine his techniques. And we believe the final fragment, Nightmare, is there? Irina asked. Kuroka shrugged expressively. Can't confirm 100%, but something with holy/corrupted energy is definitely inside. Makes my first stand on end just getting close to it, NYA. The intelligence painted a clear picture. Malikor had established a secondary base of operations at the ancient temple, continuing his work even as they'd disrupted his primary network. More concerning was the implication that the temple itself might amplify his abilities through its original Sith design. We need to move quickly, Xenovia declared, already mentally preparing for battle. If Nightmare is there, we recover it. If not, we still destroy whatever apparatus Malikor is using. Not so simple, Issei cautioned. A Sith temple contains dangers beyond ordinary traps or guardians. The dark side will be strong there, concentrated over centuries of accumulation. Even approaching requires careful preparation. What kind of preparation? Irina asked. Mental shielding at minimum, Issei replied. The dark side can influence thoughts, amplify fears, create illusions that seem entirely real. Without proper defense, even the strongest minds can be compromised. Rossweiss nodded thoughtfully. Norse warriors developed similar protections for confronting certain magical environments. I can adapt runic shields for everyone. Not perfect against your force, perhaps, but better than nothing. I can handle myself, Kuroka interjected confidently. Senjutsu masters develop mental barriers as part of our training. Had to, or we'd go mad from the constant influx of life energy information. They spent the next hour developing a tactical approach to the temple. Sateli. Te imagery provided by church resources showed the structure nestled within dense forest approximately 50 kilometers north of Kuo, remote enough to avoid casual discovery, yet accessible via forgotten logging roads. 2 approach vectors, Issei suggested, indicating potential paths on the tactical display. Main team takes the direct route as visible distraction. Second team circles to approach from behind, entering through what Kuroka identified as a secondary entrance. Split our forces, Xenovia questioned skeptically. Against a Sith Lord in his chosen fortress, Malachor will expect a direct confrontation. Issei explained. Sith philosophy emphasizes meeting strength with greater strength. By dividing our approach, we create uncertainty in his tactical assessment. After further discussion, they established team compositions. Issei, Irina, and Rosweiss would form the secondary infiltration team, utilizing Issei's force sensitivity and the complementary abilities of Angel and Valkyrie. Xenovia and Kuroka would lead the distraction team, their more aggressive combat styles perfect for drawing attention. We move at dusk, Issei decided. The temple's dark side GY will be slightly diluted during transition between day and night, creating a brief window of reduced influence. As the others prepared equipment and reviewed tactical information, Issei withdrew to the safehouse's small garden for meditation. The coming confrontation troubled him on multiple levels, not just the tactical challenges, but deeper concerns about his own connection to the Force. He settled into proper posture, breathing deeply as he reached for the familiar serenity of Jedi meditation. The Force responded as always, flowing around and through him with its characteristic subtle power. Yet something had changed since the Academy rooftop battle. His connection felt deeper, more resonant, as if new channels had opened within him. "Mind if I join you?" Irina's voice interrupted his contemplation. Though not unpleasantly, she stood at the garden's edge, her expression conveying respect for his practice while clearly hoping for permission to approach. "Of course," he replied, indicating the space beside him. She settled gracefully next to him, adopting a posture that mirrored his own with unconscious precision. For several minutes, they sat in comfortable silence, each connected to their respective sources of power, he to the Force, she to divine energy that radiated subtly from her angelic core. "Do angels meditate?" Issei asked eventually, genuinely curious about parallels between their traditions. "We call it communion," Irina replied, violet eyes still closed. "Opening ourselves to heaven's guidance and grace. Not unlike your connection to the Force, I imagine. Similar in purpose, perhaps different in method," he acknowledged. "The Force doesn't provide direct guidance so much as heightened awareness and clarity. The path remains ours to choose. Heaven is more directive," Irina admitted with a small smile. "Though interpretation of that guidance varies widely among angels. Some hear precise instructions, others, like me, receive more general impressions." The comparison intrigued him. "What impression do you receive about our current situation?" Her expression grew thoughtful as she considered the question. Complexity beyond simple categorization, traditional boundaries, between heaven and earth, angel and human, perhaps even Jedi and, whatever lies beyond Jedi, seem less defined than they once were. The observation resonated with his own recent experiences. The Force has been evolving in how it manifests through me. Or perhaps my understanding of it is evolving. Because of our connection, Irina asked softly, opening her eyes to meet his gaze directly. The question cut to the heart of his internal conflict. Traditional Jedi teaching warned that attachment led to fear of loss, which led to the dark side. Yet High's growing connection to Irina had coincided with deeper, more harmonious Force attunement rather than corruption. "Partly," he acknowledged, choosing honesty over doctrine. "When our energies merged against Malachor, something fundamental shifted in my Force connection. Not diminishment, but expansion, as if new possibilities opened that traditional Jedi philosophy doesn't address. And that troubles you." "It challenges assumptions I've held since beginning my training," Issei admitted. "The Jedi Code teaches that emotion clouds judgment, that attachment leads to fear and suffering. Yet I've experienced suggests a more complex reality." Irina considered this thoughtfully. Angels face similar questions. We're taught that divine love is universal, not particular, that we should love all creation equally as expressions of God's will. Yet many angels form deeper connections with specific individuals. Mentors, partners, even, she hesitated briefly, humans they watch over. The parallel struck Issei as significant. Both their traditions encouraged universal compassion while discouraging specific attachment, yet both angels and Jedi continued forming meaningful connections despite doctrinal cautions. Perhaps absolute detachment isn't the answer, he suggested, the thought both liberating and unsettling. Perhaps true balance includes both universal compassion and particular connections, each informing and strengthening the other. Irina's smile widened. Now you sound like some of heaven's more progressive theologians. They argue that divine love is expressed through specific relationships, not despite them. The Force works through relationship as well, Issei observed, insight crystallizing as he spoke. Connection between all living things, between matter and energy, between past, present and future. Perhaps specific bonds are microcosms of that universal connection, not contradictions to it. Their conversation paused as both contemplated implications of this perspective. Around them, the garden seemed to respond to their harmonized energies, flowers turning subtly toward them, air currents gentling, light taking on an almost tangible quality. We should rejoin the others, Issei noted eventually, aware of time passing despite the seemingly suspended moment they'd shared. Final preparations will be underway. As they rose to return inside, Irina lightly touched his arm. Whatever challenges await at the temple, Issei, I'm glad we're facing them together. The simple statement carried weight beyond its words, acknowledgement of our evolving bond and the strength it provided. Rather than distracting from his Jedi focus, Issei found that her presence somehow enhanced his connection to the Force, as if their combined light burned brighter than either could maintain alone. As am I, he replied, meaning it completely. Twilight painted the ancient forest in muted purples and deep blues as two vehicles approached their destination from different directions. 50 meters from the temple perimeter, both teams disembarked to continue on foot, maintaining communication through encrypted devices Rossweiss had enhanced with Norse protective magic. Issei led his infiltration team through dense underbrush, moving with silent precision honed through years of Jedi training. Beside him, Irina navigated with matching stealth, her exorcist background evident in her practiced movements. Rossweiss followed, each step calculated and deliberate despite her more academic background, reminder of her previous role as Valkyrie bodyguard to Odin himself. Energy concentration increasing, Issei murmured, sensing the temple's dark presence growing stronger as they approached. Everyone check your mental shields. Rossweiss touched the runic pendants she'd created for each team member. Holding stable, though I sense something unusual about this location. The energies aren't purely dark side as you described. I feel it too, Irina confirmed, her cross weapon glowing faintly in response to surrounding power. There's corrupted holy energy intermixed with the darkness. Issei nodded grimly. Excalibur nightmare. Its presence confirms Kuroka's intelligence. They continued forward until reaching a small clearing where the temple finally became visible through thinning trees. The structure rose from forest fl. Like an organic growth rather than constructed building, black stone seamlessly integrated with surrounding landscape, angles and proportions subtly wrong in ways that disturbed normal human perception. No windows interrupted its obsidian surface. A single entrance gaped at the front, not a door but a jagged opening that resembled a wound in the stone face. Faint crimson light pulsed from within, casting bloody illumination across the clearing. Welcoming, Rossweiss commented dryly. Issei extended his senses through the Force, carefully probing the temple's defenses. What he found troubled him deeply. Multiple presences inside, he reported. Stray exorcists primarily, positioned as perimeter guards. Deeper within, something else. Not Malachor himself, but entities corrupted by dark side energy. Not fully organic, not fully construct. Sith abominations, Irina whispered, recognizing the description from information Issei had shared during planning. Created through alchemy and dark rituals. Precisely. Issei indicated a barely visible seam in the temple's rear wall. The secondary entrance Kuroka identified. We'll need to move quickly once Zenovia's team initiates the distraction. They settled into position, waiting for the signal. Minutes stretched into a quarter hour as nocturnal forest sounds gradually silenced around them, animals instinctively avoiding the temple's malevolent presence. Finally, their communicators vibrated once, the agreed signal. Moments later, an explosion of holy energy erupted from the temple's front, accompanied by Zenovia's dist. Instinctive battle cry as she unleashed Excalibur Destruction's power directly against the main entrance. That's our cue, Issei noted with dry understatement as chaos erupted within the temple, shouts of alarm, running footsteps. Energy weapons discharging. They moved swiftly to the hidden entrance, where Rosweiss pressed her palms against stone inscribed with ancient runes. Similar to Norse binding sigils, she muttered, tracing patterns with glowing fingertips. Adapted for this location-specific energy signature. The stone responded to her magical manipulation, seams widening until a narrow passage appeared, just wide enough for them to enter single file. Issei led the way, lightsaber drawn but not yet activated, using force sensitivity to navigate the pitch-black corridor beyond. Stay close, he cautioned as the passage sealed behind them. The temple will attempt to separate us through both physical and psychological means. They advanced cautiously through winding passages that seemed to shift subtly between observations, distances expanding or contracting, angles changing when attention wavered. The effect was deliberately disorienting, designed to confuse intruders. Lead them deeper into the temple's maze-like interior. Issei maintained their course through force guidance, periodically checking that Irina and Rosweiss remained directly behind him. The dark side pressed against their mental shields with increasing intensity, whispers just below conscious perception, phantom movements at vision's periphery, emotional responses triggered without obvious stimuli. Central chamber ahead, Issei announced as they approached a junction where multiple corridors converged. That's where we'll find Nightmare, based on energy concentration. Rosweiss frowned, consulting a small device she'd been using to track magical signatures. Something's wrong. The readings are fluctuating wildly, as if the fragment is being actively used rather than passively stored. Before Issei could respond, a scream echoed through the corridors, Zenovia's voice, filled with pain and desperate urgency. Trap sprung, Irina whispered, hand tightening around her cross-weapon. She must have encountered stronger resistance than anticipated. We continue as planned, Issei decided after brief consideration. Kuroka is with her, they're formidable together. Our priority remains securing Nightmare. They pressed forward, reaching an antechamber decorated with disturbing reliefs depicting ancient Sith rituals. Beyond it loomed massive doors crafted from material that absorbed rather than reflected light. Not metal or stone, but something organic that seemed to pulse with subtle rhythm. Those aren't original to the temple, Issei observed, studying their construction. Malachor brought this technology with him, living material sensitive to force energy. Can we bypass them? Irina asked. Issei approached carefully, extending one hand toward the surface without quite touching it. They're keyed to dark side energy. Attempting to force entry would trigger defensive protocols. Perhaps we don't need to force anything, Rosweiss suggested, indicating faint mechanical components visible along the door's seams. These interface points appear designed for external control systems. She removed a small device from her equipment pouch, Norse magical technology disguised as ordinary electronics. Odin commissioned these for infiltration operations. They can temporarily mimic various energy signatures to bypass magical security systems. Worth attempting, Issei agreed, impressed by the Valkyrie's preparedness. Rosweiss connected her device to the interface points, fingers dancing across its surface as she calibrated settings. It needs a sample of the target energy to generate a convincing forgery, she explained. Something with dark side resonance. Issei considered their options. Nothing in their equipment would carry appropriate energy signature, except potentially one thing. My lightsaber crystal, he realized aloud. It's been exposed to dark side energy during previous encounters with Malachor. The resonance patterns should remain detectable, even though the crystal itself rejected corruption. Will extracting it damage your weapon? Irina asked with concern. Temporarily, he acknowledged, already disassembling the light saber through precise force manipulation. Components separated smoothly, floating in organized pattern until the kyber crystal emerged, azure core still threaded with gold from its interaction with Irina's angelic energy. Rosweiss accepted the crystal carefully, placing it against her device's scanning surface. Fascinating energy structure, she murmured as readings appeared on the small display. The dark side traces are minimal but distinct from surrounding patterns. Should be sufficient for our purposes. While she worked on bypassing the door security, Issei reassembled his lightsaber. Minus the crystal, rendering it temporarily non-functional but maintaining its structural integrity for later restoration. Success, Rossweiss announced several minutes later as the doors emitted a low-frequency sound halfway between mechanical click and organic sigh. We have approximately 30 seconds before the system recognizes the falsified credentials. They slipped through the partial L.Y. opened doors into the central chamber beyond, and froze at the sight that greeted them. The vast circular room was dominated by a crystalline structure rising from floor to ceiling, a latticework of black crystal interspersed with pulsing red energy conduits. At its base, suspended within a containment field similar to those they'd encountered previously, floated Excalibur Nightmare, its blade darkened nearly to black from corruption. Yet still unmistakably one of the legendary fragments. But it wasn't the fragment or crystal structure that halted their advance. It was the figure kneeling before the apparatus, not Malachor, but Zenobia, her eyes closed in apparent meditation while crimson energy crawled across her skin like living lightning. Impossible, Irina whispered, instinctively raising her weapon. She's supposed to be with Kuroka at the main entrance. It's not her, Issei stated with certainty, sensing the deception through the force. A projection, or possibly. The Ger's eyes snapped open, solid black orbs without iris or pupil. Possibly something else entirely, it said with Zenovia's voice distorted by metallic undertones. Welcome, intruders. Lord Malachor has been expecting you. The doors sealed behind them with ominous finality as the chamber's lighting shifted to blood-red emergency mode. From shadows around the perimeter emerged figures that had registered as neither fully organic nor construct in Issei's earlier force scan. Humanoid forms with skin like burnished metal, eyes glowing with same crimson energy that powered the central apparatus. Sith constructs, Issei identified, drawing his crystal-less lightsaber despite its non-functional state. Force-imbued combat droids with organic components. How delightfully clinical, the false Zenobia commented, rising with unnatural smoothness. Lord Malachor would appreciate your academic interest. Unfortunately, he cannot greet you personally. Pressing matters elsewhere require his attention. Where is the real Zenobia? Irina demanded, her cross transforming into its ribbon-like weapon form. The construct smiled with Zenovia's face, an expression completely foreign to the stoic exorcist's normal demeanor. Entertaining our other guests, of course. Your diversion was anticipated, though Lord Malachor found your tactical approach amusingly predictable. Rossweiss had been canning the chamber while the construct spoke, her device quietly mapping energy flows and structural weaknesses. The crystal matrix is channeling Nightmare's energy throughout the temple, she reported quietly. Similar to the distributed network we disrupted, but more sophisticated. Indeed, the construct confirmed, apparently possessing enhanced hearing. A prototype for the larger implementation Lord Malachor envisions. This temple serves as proof of concept, demonstrating that force energy and supernatural power can be harmonized through proper application of Sith alchemy. Corrupted, not harmonized, Issei corrected, studying the apparatus with growing concern. The crystal structure wasn't merely channeling energy, it was transforming it, corrupting the Excalibur fragment's holy power into something that resonated with dark side frequencies. If Malachor succeeded in replicating this process across multiple convergence points simultaneously, the effect would cascade through the region's supernatural energy network. Devils, angels, yokai, all would find their powers increasingly difficult to control, eventually corrupting them from within. Semantics, the construct dismissed with Zenovia's voice. Corruption, harmony, merely labels reflecting limited perspective. The process itself is inevitable. Even now, your companions fight against their own corruption. The please influence seeps through mental barriers, amplifying darkness already present within. As if confirming this claim, distant sounds of conflict intensified, explosions punctuated by screams that I'd have been Kuroka or the real Zenobia. Enough talk, Issei declared, formulating strategy even without a functional lightsaber. Irina, focus on securing Nightmare. Rossweiss, disrupt the crystal matrix. I'll handle the constructs. The false Zenobia laughed, a chilling sound entirely unlike the real exorcist's rare expressions of humor. Bold declarations from a Jedi without his weapon. Lord Malachor warned you might be overconfident. It gestured casually, and the surrounding constructs attacked in perfect synchronization, 6 metallic humanoids moving with fluid grace that belied their artificial nature. Their hands transformed into energy weapons similar to lightsabers but crackling with unstable power. Issei met their charge with force-enhanced movement, ducking beneath the Phi RST constructs swing while telekinetically hurling another against the chamber wall with enough impact to shatter its outer shell. Though his lightsaber remained non-functional without its crystal, He wielded the hilt with practiced precision, blocking strikes with the durable casing while counter-attacking vulnerable junction points in the construct's design. Nearby, Irina engaged the false Xenovia directly, Holy Ribbon clashing against a corrupted version of Excalibur destruction the construct had manifested from seemingly nowhere. Their combat moved at superhuman speed, Angel against Advank. Sith technology in a deadly dance of light and shadow. Rosweiss, meanwhile, had reached the crystal matrix and begun complex magical calculations, Nordic runes flowing from her fingertips as she identified critical nodes in the energy distribution system. The containment field around Nightmare is linked to the entire structure, she called to the others between casting sequences. Disruptee. It requires precise timing. Too quickly and the fragment's energy could discharge catastrophically. How long do you need? Issei asked, temporarily disabling another construct with a force-enhanced strike to its primary power regulator. 3 minutes minimum, the Valkyrie replied, frustration evident in her tone. These configurations are unlike anything in Norse magical theory. The false Xenovia laughed again, parrying Irina's attack with disturbing ease. Your Valkyrie friend underestimates the complexity. Lord Malachor spent weeks perfecting this system. You think you can unravel it in minutes. Despite the construct's mockery, Issei sensed uncertainty beneath its confidence. Rosweiss's approach was yielding results, fluctuations in the crystal matrix's energy pattern indica. Ted Shi was successfully interfering with its operation. Keep them occupied, Rosweiss instructed without looking up from her work. I'm making progress, but need uninterrupted concentration. Issei redoubled his efforts against the remaining constructs, drawing upon deeper force reserves to enhance his natural abilities. Without his lightsaber's cutting power, he relied on precision strikes. To key vulnerability points, targeting joints, power conduits, and sensor arrays with devastatingly accurate blows. Irina, meanwhile, had adapted her fighting style to counter the false Xenovia's unnatural capabilities. Rather than matching its strength directly, she utilized her angelic agility to create openings through misdirection and feints. You're not Xenovia, she declared during one exchange, her ribbon weapon wrapping around the construct's blade arm momentarily. She would never allow herself to be corrupted like this. Perhaps not willingly, the construct conceded with malicious glee. But the temple has ways of persuading reluctant guests. The implication sent a chill through the chamber, suggestion that the real Xenovia might be experiencing corruption attempts similar to what they faced through this simulacrum. Almost there, Rosweiss announced, her runic calculations reaching critical mass. Prepare to secure the fragment the moment the containment field drops. The false Xenovia sensed the imminent disruption and abandoned its measured combat approach, launching a desperate attack against Rosweiss with unexpected speed. You will not interfere, it howled, voice losing Xenovia's timbre completely as its true artificial nature emerged. Irina intercepted the charge, her ribbon weapon slicing through the construct's shoulder with holy power that disrupted its internal systems. The damage wasn't fatal to the artificial being, but temporarily immobilized its weapon arm. Now, Rosweiss, Issei called, having disabled 4 of the 6 combat cons. Trucks through precisely targeted force techniques. The Valkyrie completed her runic sequence with a final gesture that sent silver-blue energy cascading through the crystal matrix. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then fracture lines appeared throughout the black crystal, spreading like lightning through its structure. The containment field around Excalibur Nightmare fluctuated wildly before collapsing entirely. The fragment dropped toward the floor, no longer suspended by artificial energies. Irina moved to catch it, only for the false Xenovia to intercept her with its remaining functional arm. If I cannot have it, neither shall you, the construct declared, its damaged systems venting crimson energy in unstable bursts. Issei sensed the danger immediately, the construct was initiating self-destruction. channeling all remaining power into a final devastating explosion that would destroy everything within the chamber, including Nightmare. With no time for complex strategy, He reached out through the force toward his disassembled lightsaber. The Kyber crystal, still connected to Roswice's device, responded to his call, tearing free and streaking across the chamber toward him with comet-like trail of azure gold energy. In one fluid motion, Issei caught the crystal, reinserted it into his lightsaber hilt, and activated the weapon. The blade ignited with distinctive snap hiss, glowing more intensely than before as if energized by the temple's power rather than corrupted by it. He crossed the distance to Irina and the construct in a force-enhanced leap, lightsaber, describing a perfect arc that separated the false Zenovia's head from its shoulders. The decapitation interrupted the self-destruction sequence, causing the construct to collapse in sparking heap rather than explode. Irina completed her interrupted movement, securing Excalibur Nightmare in blessed cloth she'd prepared specifically for this purpose. The fragment's corrupted energy fought against containment, dark tendrils attempting to maintain connection with the crystal matrix. It's resisting purification, she noted with concern, reinforcing the containment through application of her own angelic power. The corruption runs deeper than surface level. We'll address that once we're safely away, Issei decided, turning toward Roswice, who continued dismantling the crystal matrix's energy distribution system. Status: 30 seconds to complete shutdown, she replied, sweat beading on her forehead from magical exertion. The system is fighting my countermeasures, adaptive programming unlike anything I've encountered. Quote, the remaining combat constructs had reoriented toward the crystal matrix, apparently prioritizing its protection over engaging intruders directly. Issei intercepted them with renewed confidence, lightsaber humming with power as he systematically disabled each with precise cuts to critical systems. Throughout the chamber, the crystal structure continued deteriorating, fractures spreading, energy conduits failing, supporting architecture beginning to crumble. The temple itself seemed to respond to the matrix's impending failure, subtle tremors running through stone floors and walls. That's it, Roswice announced as her final countermeasure took effect. The crystal matrix emitted high-pitched whine before going dark, energy conduits fading from angry red to lifeless black. Complete system failure achieved. Time to leave, Issei urged, sensing growing instability throughout the structure. The temple's Sith alchemy was integrated with the matrix. Without it, the entire building may become unstable. They made for the chamber doors, which remained sealed despite the matrix deactivation. Roswice attempted to bypass the locking mechanism again, but found the interface points no longer responsive. Secondary systems engaged, she reported with frustration. Different protocols, different access requirements. Stand back, Issei instructed. Igniting his lightsaber again, the blade plunged into the door's organic material, which recoiled and smoked at the contact. Slowly, methodically, he carved a pathway through the thick substance, not a perfect circle, but adequate for their escape. As they prepared to exit through the opening, Irina paused, head tilted as if listening. Wait, do you hear that? Through the temple's increasingly chaotic ambient noise, creaking stone, failing systems, distant rumbles, came a sound that froze them all. Zenovia's voice, unmistakably genuine this time, calling for help from somewhere deeper within the structure. It could be another trap, Roswice cautioned, though uncertainty tinged her assessment. Issei extended his senses through the force, pushing beyond the temple's disruptive influence. What he found confirmed their fears. It's her, he confirmed grimly. Her force signature is distinct from the construct's imitation. She's alive but injured, approximately 2 levels below our position. We can't leave her, Irina stated with absolute conviction, already turning toward a stairwell visible through their improvised door opening. The temple is becoming increasingly unstable, Roswice warned. Structural integrity failing throughout the lower levels. We have minutes at most before complete collapse. Then we move quickly, Issei decided, leading the way through the carved opening. Roswice, secure an escape route to the surface. Irina and I will find Zenovia. The Valkyrie nodded reluctantly. I'll maintain communication through our devices. If you're not back in 10 minutes, I'll come after you, assuming the temple still exists. They separated at the junction beyond, Roswice heading upward toward the surface while Issei and Irina descend deeper into the increasingly unstable structure. The temple's interior had transformed dramatically since the crystal matrix's deactivation, corridors shifting configuration, doorways appearing or disappearing. Gravity itself seeming to fluctuate in certain areas. Sith architecture is semi-organic, Issei explained as they navigated the chaotic environment. Without controlling influence, it everts to more primitive patterns, often harmful to intruders. Charming design choice, Irina commented dryly, her ribbon weapon maintaining active configuration to illuminate their path through increasingly darkened passages. They followed Zenovia's force signature through winding corridors that occasionally required lightsaber intervention to bypass collapsed sections. The air grew thicker as they descended, heavy with dust and metallic taste of dark side energy. Close now, Issei noted as they reached a junction where 3 passages converged. Directly ahead, behind that sealed doorway, the door in question appeared more conventional than the organic barriers they'd encountered earlier, simple metal with mechanical locking mechanism. Issei made short work of it with his lightsaber, cutting through hinges and lock in seconds. Beyond lay a chamber designed for purposes neither wanted to contemplate. Restraint apparatus dominated the center, surrounded by equipment that combined Sith technology with more recognizable medical instruments. Zenovia was secured to the central restraint, conscious but clearly weakened, her Excalibur destruction nowhere in sight. Trap, she managed to warn as they entered, her voice hoarse from apparent screaming. Kuroka, captured. Ambush at entrance. Issei scanned the chamber thoroughly through force perception before approaching. No active presences besides Zenovia, he confirmed, though the room itself contains dormant security systems, which could activate any moment, Irina noted, already moving to free her fellow exorcist from the restraints. Let's not linger. Quote, Zenovia's condition was concerning. Multiple injuries including burns consistent with energy weapon contact, plus signs of systematic weakening through what appeared to be targeted extraction of her angelic energy. Similar to what had happened to Irina during the Academy battle, but more methodical and prolonged. Can you walk? Issei asked as the final restraint released. Give me a weapon and point me toward enemies, Zenovia replied with characteristic determination despite her weakened state. I have a score to settle. Escape first, vengeance later, Irina counseled, supporting her fellow exorcist as they exited the chamber. Nightmare is secured, mission partially accomplished. Kuroka, Zenovia asked as they navigated back toward the junction. Unknown, Issei admitted, but her capture suggests she maintained her end of our agreement, providing distraction while we infiltrated. Their communicators activated with Rosweiss's URG. End voice. Temple structural integrity failing rapidly. Complete collapse estimated within 5 minutes. What's your status? We have Zenovia, Issei reported. Heading to your position now. Kuroka remains unaccounted for. I've reached the surface, Rosweiss confirmed. Established defensive perimeter against remaining hostiles. Follow beacon signal to my location. The temple's deteriora. Tian accelerated noticeably as they ascended toward the surface, entire corridors collapsing behind them, floors cracking beneath their feet, support structures giving way with alarming frequency. Issei took point, using force-enhanced reflexes to identify safe passages while Irina helped Zenovia maintain pace despite her injuries. Almost there, he encouraged as they reached a final stairwell leading upward. Light filtered from above, not natural moonlight but the distinctive glow of Norse magical illumination Rosweiss had established to guide them. The stairwell itself presented final challenge, steps partially collapsed, walls bulging inward from structural pressure. They ascended carefully, testing each foothold before committing weight. 3/4 of the way up, disaster struck. A massive tremor shook the entire temple, causing the remaining stairs to separate from the wall with sickening crack. Irina and Zenovia, several steps behind Issei, found themselves suddenly without support as the section collapsed beneath them. Issei, Irina cried out, instinctively pushing Zenovia toward him with her remaining strength. His response was immediate and powered by something beyond conscious thought, a force pull of unprecedented power that swept both women upward as if carried by invisible hurricane. They landed roughly but safely on the intact section beside him, momentum carrying them against the opposite wall. No time for recovery or discussion, the entire stairwell was failing around them. Issei urged them forward, practically carrying Zenovia while Irina forced he RSELF to continue despite fresh injuries from the rough landing. They emerged into cool night air seconds before the temple entrance collapsed behind them with thunderous finality. Rosweiss rushed forward to assist, supporting Zenovia's other side as they retreated to safer distance among the trees. Only when they'd reached their predetermined extraction point did they pause to assess conditions. Zenovia required immediate medical attention. Her injuries, while not life-threatening individually, had accumulated to dangerous levels. Irina had sustained moderate damage during their escape, including a concerning gash along her left arm that bled despite her angelic constitution's enhanced healing. Issei himself had emerged relatively unscathed physically, though force expenditure during their escape had left him mentally fatigued. Rosweiss appeared least affected, her Valkyrie training and natural resilience serving her well throughout the ordeal. Excalibur Nightmare. Zenovia as Ked weakly as Rosweiss applied emergency medical treatment to her most serious injuries. Secured, Irina confirmed, indicating the blessed cloth bundle secured within her tactical vest. Though heavily corrupted, it will require extensive purification before becoming usable again. And my destruction, not found, Issei admitted. Likely still within the temple ruins. Zenovia closed her eyes briefly, genuine pain crossing her features at this news. Her connection to the massive fragment had been profound. Exorcists often developed spiritual bonds with their assigned Excalibur pieces. What happened at the entrance? Rosweiss asked gently. Our intelligence suggested lighter defenses than you encountered. Malachor anticipated everything, Zenovia replied bitterly. The moment we engaged the outer guards, hidden mechanisms activated, some kind of stasis field that rendered conventional movement impossible. Kuroka managed partial resistance through her senjutsu, created opening for me to escape. But was captured in the process. And you? Irina prompted when Zenovia fell silent, clearly struggling with difficult memories. Interrogation, the blue-haired exorcist stated flatly. Not Malachor himself, some subordinate with partial Sith training. They were particularly interested in angelic energy interaction with Excalibur fragments. The implication hung heavily between them. Malachor's continued research into combining supernatural energies with force techniques, using captured subjects for practical experimentation. We'll need to report this development to our respective authorities, Rosweiss noted, completing her emergency treatment of Zenovia's worst injuries, particularly Malachor's apparent success in manipulating angelic energy through Sith alchemy. And Kuroka? Issei asked, concerned about their Nekosho ally despite her complicated background. We honor our agreement, he decided after brief consideration. She fulfilled her part by revealing accurate intelligence about the temple and supporting our operation. Her capture occurred while rendering assistance to our team. Their extraction vehicles arrived minutes later, church sup. Lied transportation for Irina and Zenovia, Rosweiss's personal vehicle for herself and Issei. Before separating, they established rendezvous at the safe house for the following morning to debrief and plan next steps. As Issei settled into the passenger seat of Rosweiss's car, fatigue finally catching up with him, the Valkyrie gave him a sidelong glance filled with professional assessment. That force pull on the stairwell, she noted casually as they drove away from the collapsed temple. Considerably beyond the capabilities you've previously demonstrated. Issei nodded, recognizing the observation as accurate. The force responded, differently, more powerfully than expected. Because of Irina, Rosweiss suggested, her tone carefully neutral but eyes reflecting academic curiosity. Your connection to her seems to amplify certain abilities, particularly in moments of crisis. The assessment aligned with his own developing understanding, though hearing it stated so directly by an outside observer added weight to its implications. Traditional Jedi teaching would consider such enhancement dangerous, he admitted. Emotional connection leading to unpredictable power fluctuations. Yet you didn't fall to darkness, Rosweiss observed thoughtfully. Quite the opposite. Your force signature during that moment was remarkably pure. Almost harmonized. You can perceive force signatures? Issei asked, surprised by this revelation. Rosweiss smiled slightly. Not precisely as you do. But Valkyrie training includes sensitivity to various energy patterns. Yours has distinct resonance that changes subtly depending on circumstance and companions. The observation fascinated him, outside perspective on force manifestation from someone with entirely different magical framework. And what did you perceive during that moment? Completion, she replied simply, as if disparate energy patterns suddenly aligned into more perfect configuration. After brief hesitation, she added, I've observed similar phenomena in certain Norse magical practices, particularly those involving complementary practitioners working in tandem. Battle meditation, Issei murmured, recognizing parallels to advanced Jedi techniques he'd studied theoretically but never fully implemented. Force users working together can achieve effects impossible individually, but traditional AP plication involves careful emotional distance between participants. Perhaps your Jedi predecessors never encountered appropriate complementary energies, Rossweiss suggested. Earth's supernatural framework operates differently from conventional force paradigms, based on your descriptions. The conversation paused as Rossweiss navigated a particularly difficult section of forest road. When they reached smoother terrain, she continued her analysis with academic precision. During my research today, I encountered something potentially significant. The temple contained archives, data storage, systems combining technology with mystical components. Before the crystal matrix failed, I managed to download fragments of information. Sith records, Issei asked, immediately alert despite his fatigue. Older, Rossweiss corrected, predating conventional Sith history, according to timestamps. References to early Force users who discovered Earth during formative period of their understanding. The First Great Schism, Issei realized, recalling ancient Jedi history. Before light and dark sides were formally distinguished. When Force users explored many approaches without rigid doctrinal boundaries. Precisely. These early explorers documented Earth's unique energy configuration, noting specifically how force manipulation here required adaptation to existing supernatural frameworks. She glanced at him significantly, including specific references to divine energy harmonization through personal connection rather than abstract technique. The implications stunned him into momentary silence. If Rossweiss's discovery proved accurate, it suggested that the earliest Force users on Earth had developed methodologies specifically designed to work with this planet's unique soup. Our natural environment, approaches potentially lost or suppressed during later Jedi doctrinal codification. I'll need to see these records, he said finally. Of course, though they're fragmentary, perhaps 10% of original archive, based on file structure. Rossweiss navigated another turn before adding, there's something else. The records mention specific Earth locations with unusual fork properties, convergence points where cosmic energy and supernatural power naturally harmonize without corruption. Natural counterparts to what Malachor is attempting artificially, Issei surmised. Exactly. Locations where Force users and supernatural entities could potentially combine abilities without dark side influence. She smiled slightly. One such location is identified within 50 kilometers of Kuo. The revelation opened new strategic possibilities, both for countering Malachor and for exploring the evolving connection between himself and Irina that traditional Jedi doctrine inadequately explained. Once we've secured the Excalibur fragments and treated injuries, Issei decided, we should investigate this convergence point. If it offers natural harmonization without corruption, it could provide template for countering Malachor's artificial methodology. Rossweiss completed his thought. As well as safer environment for exploring your unique force manifestation with Irina. The remainder of their journey passed in thoughtful silence, each processing implications of their discoveries and experiences. By the time they reached Kuos outskirts, Issei had reached a provisional conclusion that would have shocked his Jedi instructors. The path forward might require not rejecting emotional connection, but understanding and channeling it appropriately within 4CE framework adapted specifically to Earth's unique supernatural environment. The Safehouse Medical Facility, though modest by hospital standards, provided essential treatment for injuries sustained during their temple operation. Zenobia occupied the primary recovery bed, multiple monitoring systems tracking her condition as church-supplied medical technology accelerated her healing process. Issei sat beside Irina in adjacent treatment area, watching as she stubbornly attempted to bandage her own arm despite awkward angle and limited mobility. Allow me, he offered after her third frustrated attempt. She hesitated briefly before extending her injured arm toward him. I should be better at this. Field medicine was part of exorcist training. Considerably more difficult to treat yourself, he observed, carefully cleaning the wound before applying antiseptic and fresh bandages. Especially with non-dominant hand. The injury was concerning, deeper than initial assessment had suggested, with edges showing discoloration typical of dark side corruption. Contact with temple energies had apparently contaminated the wound, slowing her natural angelic healing. It's refusing conventional treatment, she admitted. Watching his methodical work, something in that temple affected my regenerative abilities. Issei nodded, having noticed the same issue. Dark side corruption specifically targets life energy, the same force that powers natural healing. I might be able to help, if you're willing to try something unconventional. More unconventional than everything else we've done lately? She asked with tired smile. Force healing, he explained. Not my specialty, but I received basic training. It might counteract the corruption enough for your natural abilities to resume functioning. Irina considered briefly before nodding. I trust you. The simple statement carried weight beyond its apparent meaning. Trust not just in his medical skill, but in his connection to the Force despite its unfamiliarity to her angelic framework. Issei placed his hands gently on either side of the bandaged wound, closing his eyes to focus more completely on Force currents flowing between them. The corruption was immediately evident. Dark tendrils extending from the physical injury into her energy pathways, subtle but persistent in their interference. He began carefully, directing healing energy to contaminated areas, not forcing change, but encouraging natural processes to reassert themselves. The technique required delicate balance between active intervention and patient guidance, allowing life itself to determine optimal healing patterns. As he worked, something unexpected occurred. Irina's angelic energy responded to his force application, not resisting or competing, but harmonizing in manner similar to their previous connections. The resonance pattern established itself naturally, her divine energy and his force healing synchronizing without conscious direction from either. The effect accelerated healing dramatically. Corruption receded before their combined energy, dark tendrils dissolving as light, both force and angelic, restored natural patterns. Within minutes, the wound had improved more than hours of conventional treatment could have accomplished. When Issei finally opened his eyes and withdrew his hands, he found Irina watching him with expressio N of wonder tinged with something deeper. That was, she began, seemingly at loss for adequate description. Harmonization, he supplied, similar to what happened during our battles with Malachor, but gentler. Healing rather than combative. She flexed her arm experimentally, finding significantly improved mobility and reduced pain. It felt like completion, as if something always meant to work together finally aligned properly. The description resonated with his own experience, and with Rosweiss's earlier observation about their energy patterns. Before he could respond, however, the Valkyrie herself entered the medical area, tablet computer in hand displaying complex data patterns. Sorry to interrupt, she said, though her slight smile suggested she'd observed their healing session with academic interest. I've completed preliminary analysis of the temple archive fragments. Several findings merit immediate attention. She placed the tablet on nearby table, displaying had appeared to be ancient star charts overlaid with energy flow diagrams. These map convergence points between force nexuses and supernatural ley lines throughout this region, she explained. Most significant is this location. She indicated a point approximately 40 kilometers northwest of Kuo. A natural harmonization site where cosmic and supernatural energies blend without corruption. The counterpart to Malachor's artificial methodology, Issei noted, remembering their earlier discussion. Precisely. But there's more. Rosweiss swiped to different displays showing timeline projections. Based on energy accumulation patterns we observed in the temple, I've calculated Malachor's likely timetable. Despite our disruption of his crystal matrix, residual effects continue propagating through regional ley lines. Meaning, Irina prompted. Meaning he's still making progress, albeit slower than originally planned. Conservative estimate gives us approximately 1 week before eruption reaches critical mass within the supernatural energy network. And non-conservative estimate? Issei asked, noting her careful phrasing. Rosweiss's expression tightened. 3 days. 4 at most. The process has become self-sustaining to some degree, disrupting individual nodes no longer sufficient to halt overall progression. The news sobered them all. Despite multiple victories, recovering 2 Excalibur fragments, disrupting the temple operation, Malicor's larger strategy continued advancing. Like master chess player, he had apparently anticipated potential losses and estably shed contingencies that maintained progress toward ultimate objective. We need to locate Malicor himself, Issei determined. Disrupting his operations has proven insufficient. We must confront the source directly. Agreed. Rossweiss nodded. But his location remains unknown. The temple was merely auxiliary facility, not his primary base. What about Kuroka? Irina asked. If Malicor's forces captured her at the temple, she might be held wherever his main operations are centered. Possible, Issei acknowledged, though rescuing her presents significant challenges without knowing where. He stopped mid-sentence. Attention suddenly focused elsewhere as force awareness detected unexpected presence approaching the safe house, familiar yet altered energy signature moving with determined purpose toward their location. Someone's coming, he announced, moving immediately toward the main room. Someone who knows exactly where to find us despite the safehouse's concealment wards. Rossweiss and Irina followed, the latter grabbing her cross-weapon despite her recent injury. They reached the monitoring station just as perimeter alerts activated, proximity warnings indicating soup. Our natural entity approaching from northeast. External cameras revealed a figure staggering along the street, female form moving with determination despite obvious injuries. Black hair, torn clothing, distinctive cat ears now drooping with exhaustion. Kuroka, Issei identified, already heading for the door. She's escaped somehow. Caution overrode immediate response. They established defensive positions before Issei carefully opened the door, maintaining force awareness for potential traps or pursuit. The Nekosho had reached their outer perimeter, leaning heavily against fence post as if remaining upright through sheer willpower. Took you long enough, she managed as Issei approached. Been walking for hours. Her condition was alarming. Multiple injuries including energy weapon burns similar to Zenovia's. Evidence of systematic torture, and concerning fluctuations in her Yukai energy signature suggesting profound depletion. We thought you captured, Issei said as he helped support her weight. How did you escape? Trade secret. Kuroka attempted her usual playful tone, though effect was undermined by barely suppressed wince. Let's just say, Malicor underestimated Senjutsu's versatility. They brought her inside, establishing new treatment area adjacent to Zenovia's. Medical assessment confirmed critical condition. Beyond physical injuries, her spiritual energy had been systematically harvested in manner consistent with Malicor's experimental methodology. He's collecting it, she explained once stabilizing treatment had begun. Different energy types from different sources. Angels, Yukai, devils, building some kind of comprehensive framework. For what purpose? Rossweiss asked. Adjusting intravenous medications supplying vital nutrients Kuroka's depleted system required. Dimensional manipulation, the Nekosho replied weakly. Creating bridges between realms. Not just portals, fundamental restructuring of boundary mechanics. The explanation aligned with their developing understanding of Malicor's ultimate objective, not merely corrupting supernatural energy systems, but altering the fundamental relationship between diamonds. Ions that kept Earth's reality distinct from others. Did you see his primary facility? Issei asked. Where he's centralizing these operations? Kuroka nodded slightly, conserving energy with each movement. Underneath Kuo Academy. Old systems, predating current school. Some kind of ancient construct rebuilt with Sith technology. The location made strategic sense. Kuo Academy had been UILT a top major convergence point where multiple ley lines intersected. Devils had chosen the location specifically for its supernatural significance, establishing their territory where natural energy flows reinforced their presence. That's why he targeted the academy during Kokobil's attack, Irina realized. Not just for the fragment, but to assess the site's properties for his larger plan. How extensive are the underground facilities? Rossweiss inquired, already mapping strategic implications. Massive, Kuroka confirmed. Multiple levels. Captured supernaturals. Maybe 24. Different factions. All being harvested. The scale exceeded their previous estimates. Malachor wasn't conducting isolated experiments but systematic collection of diverse supernatural energies, wielding comprehensive database of interaction patterns for his dimensional manipulation project. When Issei pressed gently, aware of Kuroka's deteriorating condition but needing critical intelligence. When is he implementing the final phase? 3 days, the Nekosho whispered, confirming Rosweiss's non-conservative estimate. Celestial alignment amplifies effect. Only happens once per century. With that final revelation, Kuroka's remaining strength faltered. She slipped into unconsciousness, though medical monitors indicated stable life signs, her body forcing necessary recovery period after extraordinary exertion. The coalition regrouped in the safehouse's main room, processing implications of Kuroka's intelligence. 3 days until Malachor's final implementation. Our ground facility beneath Kuo Academy containing captured supernaturals from multiple factions. Dimensional boundary manipulation extending beyond previous estimates of regional corruption. We need reinforcements, Zenobia stated flatly from wheelchair they'd insisted she use despite her protests. This exceeds our coalition's current capabilities. Agreed, Rosweiss nodded. I'll contact Asgard immediately. Odin should authorize Valkyrie deployment given threat parameters. The Church will respond similarly once I report Malachor's captive collection activities, Zenobia added. Party. Kularli with 2 Excalibur fragments now secured. We should coordinate with Citri and Grimori as well, Issei suggested. Their territory, their school, they have both obligation and motivation to assist. Irina had been unusually quiet during this exchange, her expression troubled beyond immediate strategic concerns. When discussion paused, she spoke with uncharacteristic hesitation. Before we commit to full-scale assault, perhaps we should investigate the natural harmonization site Rosweiss identified. The suggestion drew surprised attention from others. Irina continued, convictio, growing as she explained her reasoning. If that location naturally achieves what Malachor is attempting artificially, it might provide insights critical to countering his methodology. Rather than just disrupting his operation, we might develop fundamental counter-approach that renders his entire framework vulnerable. Scientific rather than purely tactical response, Rosweiss translated, nodding thoughtfully. Logical, though time constraints present obvious challenges. I could examine the site while you coordinate reinforcements, Issei offered, seeing merit in Irina's suggestion. My force sensitivity might detect aspects others would miss. I'll accompany you, Irina stated immediately. Our combined energies have proven effective in previous encounters. If the site truly harmonizes force and divine power naturally, our presence together might reveal mechanisms otherwise undetectable. The proposal made tactical sense despite its unorthodox nature. While Rosweiss and Zenobia established communication with their respective authorities and coordinated Devil faction involvement, Issei and Irina would investigate the natural convergence point for potential counter-street strategies against Malachor's artificial methodology. We leave at dawn, Issei decided. 6 hours to rest and prepare, then full day to investigate the site before returning to join coalition assault planning. As the others dispersed to their respective tasks, Irina lingered behind, something clearly weighing on her mind. When they were relatively alone, she spoke softly. There's another reason. I suggested investigating the harmonization site. Issei nodded encouragingly, sensing her seriousness. Our connection, whatever it is between us, keeps growing stronger, she continued. During healing session earlier, I felt something profound, something that challenges fundamental assumptions about separation between Jedi and angel methodologies. I felt it too, Issei acknowledged. Harmonization beyond anything my training anticipated. Before we commit to confronting Malachor directly, Irina said, violet eyes meeting his with unusual intensity, we need to understand what's happening between us. Not just for tactical advantage, but because. She hesitated, then finished with simple honesty that affected him more than elaborate explanation could have. Because it matters, Issei. Beyond mission parameters or factional interests. What's developing between us matters in ways I don't fully understand but can't ignore. The statement resonated with his own unspoken though. Acknowledgement that their evolving connection transcended professional cooperation or even friendship. Something fundamental was changing between them, something with implications neither there. Jedi nor angelic traditions had prepared them to navigate. Then we'll investigate together, he agreed quietly. Both the sight and what's happening between us. Their shared glance conveyed understanding beyond words, recognition that whatever discoveries awaited at the harmonization site might change not just their approach to Malikor's threat, but their understanding of their own intertwined paths. As night deepened around the safe house, each member of their coalition prepared differently for challenges ahead. Rossweiss compiled research and established communication protocols with Asgard. Zenobia, despite injuries, meticulously examined Excalibur Nightmare, beginning purification process to render it usable against Malakor. Kuroka recovered in medically induced sleep, her Nekosho constitution slowly rebuilding depleted energy reserves. And Issei sat in quiet meditation on safehouse roof, contemplating how dramatically his understanding of the Force had evolved since arriving on Earth. The Jedi Code remained foundation of his training, yet increasingly appeared incomplete rather than incorrect, framework requiring expansion rather than replacement to encompass the unique interactions he'd experienced. Stars wheeled overhead, same stars visible from countless worlds where Jedi had maintained their traditions for millennia. Yet here on Earth, something different was emerging. Not corruption of those traditions, but perhaps their evolution into something that incorporated rather than rejected connection. Tomorrow would bring new discoveries at the harmonization site. 3 days hence would bring confrontation with Malakor that might determine fate of supernatural balance throughout the region. But tonight, Issei allowed himself moment of quiet acknowledgement, whatever happened in days ahead. His path as Jedi had irrevocably changed through connection with Irina Shidou, and that change felt not like fall toward darkness, but ascension toward more complete light. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.